Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, a weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Matthias.
And I'm Jarvis.
Both of us love storytelling, but we know that sometimes it can be difficult to just sit down and write.
So we're doing a challenge. Every week we set a timer for 30 minutes and write a complete short story. Our goal is to include at least 3 randomly generated words.
Then we read the stories on the podcast and talk about what we've learned in writing them. We finish off by talking about stories written by you listeners.
We're simply here to help you do the right thing.
This week we're joined again by our guest Taylor Hoyt.
Woo!
It me.
How are you doing?
It me. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's been a wild summer, but you know what? That's what summer's for.
Hell yeah. Taylor was last on episode 12, which you should go listen. It was a really great episode. Probably I would say that's when we started getting good.
I think that was one of the first episodes of this summer, yeah?
No, it was the first episode of the summer that we had a guest, I think. No, that's not true. We had Sterling on before.
Yeah.
She's great too, but I think we weren't great until Taylor showed us the way.
Oh,
exactly.
Pish posh.
Now we're godlike.
So, Taylor, can you rehash? Not rehash. That's so negative. Why did I say that?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself again, for those that haven't listened to that episode?
Yeah. So, my name's Taylor. I've been writing, pretty much, I would say like most writers, quote unquote, my whole life.
Uh-huh.
But, my genres have kind of been all over the place. But mainly I go in between, short story and poetry, and usually they kind of like blend together sometimes, but those are my top 2 kind of things.
Yeah. That's interesting. Sorry to immediately tangent off into the sunset. I find the idea of genres, the word genre is so messed up at this point. I was talking to an English major back when in the spring semester, and I was like, there's this interesting genre of fantasy. It's biopunk, right? She's like, or superheroes. I was talking about superheroes as a genre. She's like, superheroes are not a genre, and I was like, yeah, they are. Then what would you call them? Just fantasy. But that's not.
Well, I mean, that's definitely at least urban fantasy.
Yeah, it's a kind of, but it goes further than that, because the real genres, the original way the word came up was to differentiate between romance and epic and novel. Those are the genres, right? And then you immediately get into subgenres when you're talking about fantasy, which is weird. And then you get into sub-genres when you talk about what we actually think of genres, which is superheroes and horror. Well, actually, I think horror might be anyway.
I think it's just a subgenre, but I mean now we have sub-genres.
Right. That's the part
even
that's
more specific.
It's weird to me.
The more you dissect
fantasy, hero,
right, romance. Is that it almost seems like a sliding scale to me, because fantasy, I think you can sort of compare to romance as and horror as a concept, like a type of book,
Yeah.
Sure. And then it's on the sliding scale between this is the topic, the genre, and this is the type of book that you're physically holding, genre.
Exactly.
I don't know if that makes any sense. It just means English majors are weird.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all very arbitrary. And some people definitely get hung up on it, I'm just a horror writer, and then they basically just box themselves in to that one spot. Which, I mean, hey, it's fine to know what you like to write, but genres, at least I feel, were kind of meant to be bent a little and to be explored more than what's just the typical bread and butter.
For sure. Right. As an English major, I can definitely concur that we're a very strange bunch. What I think is interesting is even as a consumer of literature, I feel like people get hung up in what we even consider literature to be. I remember I took my first world literature class, and it was this very old man, and I had his class at 8 a.m. literally probably best professor I ever had, just because like at 8 a.m, it was only me and another student who would actually talk and like do the reading.
Right, yeah.
So he would let me, I swear to God, he let me show up at least 10 to 15 minutes late to class every day with the coffee that made me late, just because I talked. But like he told but something he said that like really like started to change the way I viewed it, because like I'm prone to very, I don't know, pretentious mannerisms and thinking, and I think that kind of goes with the territory, because when you're an English major, you like want to be in with that kind of thinking.
And you're rewarded for it, and
exactly. But I remember him saying like, essentially like, film is a type of literature, and that like totally blew my mind, because the more I thought about it, I was like, well, of course it is. Like, you have characters, you have stories, you have symbols, you have motifs. Like, yeah, I think essentially like any form of storytelling is going to be literature. So the whole debate over what we consider to be like legitimate genres is all, again, it's all arbitrary. It's all just hang-ups. Like, as long as you can like consume it and take something from it, like I wouldn't see a reason to like scoff at it, you know?
Right.
Well, honestly, I like never thought of it like that, but it makes perfect sense to consider film a literature, because I don't know, like growing up I always saw it as like different things, and also just like sticking heavily to the textbook definition of literature, but definitions go beyond just the actual definition.
To go off, I have a couple of things to say about that. So, in my mind, there's like capital L literature, which is like the canon, right? Which is like what the English professors.
It's the true canon.
Well, it's not like it's arbitrarily defined by English professors with like clout, basically. Like there's probably plenty of other English professors that are like or actually probably all of them disagree with one addition to the canon and what's not added to it. But then basically literally everything is literature. Like, I was in a performance of literature class, which is not as great as it sounded. It was basically like dramatic theater, like the whole, it was even more pretentious than theater. I was actually really annoyed because like the professor would like say like a slightly philosophical concept and everyone in the crowd would like lose their minds. They'd be like, but it's like, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? Like that words have power and stuff like that. Like, anyway, let's I won't jump into that too far. But one thing that like was good that they covered was how everything is a text. Like, you can analyze like any part of society, right, as a text, because it's like, sure, if it's not in a book, maybe it's not capital. There's no way it can be capital L literature, right? But like what we call a chair being a chair is like something worthy of analysis, right? Or like what gender and stuff like that. That's really the key example there of gender just being a social construct and analyzing it. I'm really going off the deep end here anyway. But
I mean, I definitely feel for that.
I really wish that English departments focused a lot more on popular literature. In popular media, because I feel like if we are going to analyze something and like try to find a new way to look at it, a more positive way, what we can learn from it, shouldn't we do that for like what people are actually consuming? Like I say this all the time, but like, isn't it much more worthy of analysis to analyze a Marvel movie than another analysis of Shakespeare? Like, I get that Shakespeare influenced a ton of stuff, so maybe it's just worth it for that alone.
Yeah, but it's not new. It's not popping.
Like, I mean, there's plenty of like Ulysses, right? Maybe I mentioned this on the last episode of the podcast. I don't know. I've talked about this recently, but like, why? Like, we don't need. Who else is going to read another analysis of Ulysses other than people who have like entirely focused on English and like that make that their goal, right? Like, your average person isn't going to benefit from that, right? And not to like boil everything down to like practical, quote unquote practical impact on society, right? Because art is worthy of art itself, right? But like, if you're actually trying to change society for the better, right, and you do want to try to make an impact, in my mind, you should analyze Marvel movies and try to get that analysis attention.
Yeah, or at least just like have a stronger sense of here and now when you are looking at different pieces, because naturally art in general, especially literature, has changed over time.
Yeah.
So you should, like, yes, it is great to like go back and read the like greats, because of course they're great for a reason. But if you actually want to like do something within this world, you should know what's now and what might even get eyes, or at least just like where we have ended up now versus where we were.
I do think it's important to be incorporating more modern texts into our courses. I think it's important, of course, to like go back and read like Voltaire and Shakespeare. Like, it's important to have that foundation so you know, like, how much,
like, this is what literature can be, right?
Yeah,
like,
and how far we have come in our understanding and, you know, our philosophies, how much that's changed. But I mean, like, there have been some times where I've taken a course where it's like, oh, we're gonna get up to like modern text, and the closest we got was like early, like mid 1950s, and I'm like, that's not like, that's in the technical sense, by like the
modern
educational sense, that's
not
modern. But it's not like, this wasn't published. Like, we should have more things, I think, that have been published within the last like 5 years being studied.
Like,
what
just for real quick, like one professor is doing a course on the Harry Potter books, and like that's exactly what we should be analyzing, because it's a part of our culture, right? So what is this really big part of our culture? How is it influencing us, and how can we change the narrative around it to influence us in a better way?
Yeah, because I mean, like, I think it was 2 years ago, we were reading the like Sellout, which came out 2 years ago, and it was great reading that very modern book and like really going through it and analyzing it with as much attention as we do like older pieces. Because I mean, like, as of right now, that's like my second favorite book next to Brave New World, and it's because like it's definitely like it is a piece of literature that I can see spawning other things and going further beyond just the book itself. So
like I really think there should be an analysis of Twilight, especially just because of like, how can we, like, it's kind of not objectively bad, but like it's bad in a lot of ways, right? So like, how has that impacted us, right? Or 50 Shades of Grey for that matter, right? Like, I mean, tons of people read it.
You could probably do like both of those at the same time,
So,
because I mean, like, no matter how you feel about Twilight, it spawns a whole entire like a subgenre of novels.
YA,
and it basically just like made YA as popular as it is now, which YA is the biggest reader demographic.
Yeah.
To where if you want to make money, you gotta make a like YA or something that the YA audience would like. And then also with that, it affected films even more so, to where there can be a film franchise with 6 different movies in it. You know, beyond like Harry Potter, but like that was a token to where now people want these longer term stories to be on the like big screen. So like, even if you don't enjoy that book itself, it did a lot for the landscape.
That's true.
Which is why we should analyze it.
Yeah. So this is a great tangent. I think this is the longest like on-topic tangent we've had at the very beginning.
I know, that's pretty good.
Interesting. So listen to Do the Right Thing for very in-depth literary analysis.
Of Twilight.
Like literary analysis of analysis. Anyway, just to top this all, just to end this section, we should say that we are like college students, and so there's probably a lot of stuff that we're missing, a lot of perspective that we're missing, at least me anyway. So if you do disagree with us, please send us an email at rightthingcast@gmail.com, which we'll say it again. And also, at the end
if you are wrong
podcast.
by disagreeing with us, you can definitely send it to us.
Yeah.
Because
send us some hate mail,
because we're college students.
Actually, please don't send us hate mail. I'll be really sad.
I would be so happy, honestly.
One day someone will write in the submitted stories. They will write a fanfic of us, and it will be very insulting.
Wait, are you talking about like a good fanfic or like a bad fanfic?
Both. It's a matter of time before we get both.
Yeah, and I'm gonna love it because I don't know. I would love to see how people would portray our characters.
I want to see a whole fanfic with the whole Doof cast in it.
Oh yeah,
with everyone. Anyway, so let's actually transition into the main part of the podcast. Let's talk about this week's words.
All right.
So this week's words were quite a draw. They were death, wilderness, flame, and medical. So we had to choose three of those to write a story in 30 minutes. And
which I think honestly was one of our best draws. Because we got such a wide a variety of stories, and basically every word within this pick is saying something and is pulling in a specific direction to where like a lot of people even said in their like comments that they were actively trying to go against where the words were pulling them, which is great. That's like kind of what we want to see, is that variety.
Yeah.
I was impressed
we had 17 stories this week, 14 of which were not the three of us, which is kind of crazy. That's a really
a lot of reading.
Yeah, it's a lot of reading. Yeah, I loved all of them though. They were really good.
Well, I was impressed by how many people were actually able to use all four. I was like, ooh, bonus round.
For the record, you do not have to use
bonus points out here.
all four. In fact, for me personally, not to no shade if you did, but I prefer when there's only three, because then it's like, oh, which ones did you choose, and like how did that influence your story and stuff. Anyway, yeah, so just use as many words as you want,
or use none of them.
Yeah, you could just post your story completely unrelated.
Throw up the biggest middle finger. Just do it.
So I used death, wilderness, and flame, and I did not use medical.
Okay.
And the story focuses on wilderness, which is immediately obvious because the title's the forest. Because I wasn't creative.
Really? Okay. Honestly, when I saw that title, I didn't know that it took place in a forest.
Oh, okay. Well, now you know.
Yeah, now I do.
It's a joke because it's all about a forest. Anyway, yeah. So the each part definitely shows up in the story. I didn't want to fight the initial reactions too much, because I just kind of wanted to put out a story, and I had a decent idea. When
you were first writing it, beyond wilderness, did the other words play a key part in it, or like were they all just sprinkled in there?
Well, outside of the words, I wanted. I noticed that in the past while, I think I've posted a lot of stories that were like pretty dialogue driven, or pretty like not jokey, but like I don't know, like not super serious either. And so I wanted to do something that was more serious and dramatic. I mean, it's not like super serious; it's just a little bit more. So yeah, it's about the forest instead this time. So what about you guys? What words did you use?
We should start with our guest.
Well, we started with me. Just saying, we did start with me.
I guess you're the guest for this week, Matthias.
That's right. Taylor is our new host. I am the new guest.
I'm the captain now.
Oh no. This is my podcast.
I don't know how to do anything, so I'll immediately just hand the power back over.
You can keep the hat.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
Okay. We have hats?
We got mugs. There's Doof mugs. They actually look pretty good, although I think we might be changing up how we do merchandise soon. Yeah. But I want to get one.
If you want a Do the Right Thing shirt, comment below.
Comment
hell yeah.
below wherever you are.
Yeah.
We don't have any shirts. We don't even have a design for the shirt.
Hey, don't tell them that.
I mean, it's kind of obvious. I don't. Taylor, what words did you use?
I actually used the same three. So
okay, cool.
A couple of them. I mean, I'll get into it later, but I do feel like I relied a lot on the pull of the words and a lot of cliches, but I feel like I kind of make fun of that. Mm-hmm. Like flame, I was like, oh, hair, which is I feel like if you're not thinking of fire, that's the next way you use that word.
Right,
so
right.
Yeah. That or like old flame.
Yeah, that would work too. I don't know if anyone did that actually.
Someone did. It was in Def Dance. I don't know what it was.
Anyway, just a real quick tangent on the stories. You guys did really well, and I'm so glad that we got so many. That it was very impressive, a little overwhelming, and we'll talk about that at the end.
Oh yeah. But I mean, like, even so, it's like insane how we went from 2 weeks ago having 3, including ours. And now it's like 17, and then I think like this morning, 3 more just came in. Like it's bonkers.
Yeah. So Jarvis, which words did you use?
Wait, Taylor, were you done speaking?
Oh yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
I appreciate it.
Well then, yes, it is me, Jarvis.
Okay.
Let's see what
Very
words I
smooth
use.
transition.
Okay, I use wilderness, flame, and death.
Okay, so we all use the same ones. We just didn't use medical.
Did.
I wonder why.
I don't know, because like medical, I feel it's too strong, right? Like medical means one thing, basically. But with wilderness and flame and death, you can use those in like a variety of different places. But
I feel like those first 3, death, wilderness, and flame, are so much more evocative of like metaphors and drama and stuff like that. Medical, I mean, the word itself kind of feels clinical and clean, and it's very specific to, like, it's not even like medicine, right? Medicine can be used as a metaphor for other stuff, but medical is like when you can only use it when you're talking about actually things that are medical, and only in a certain phrasing for it. So
yeah, because most people that I've seen, and just in general, I've always heard it as medical aid, medical attention, medical something that starts with an A, basically.
Sure, okay.
But yeah, I don't know. This week I tried for something completely different.
Your story is going to be really interesting. I don't know if you read it, Taylor, yet, but it's a ride.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm excited.
I guess I would also call it a ride. But yeah, and I find the real reason why I wrote it like that is because, first and foremost, the idea was kind of bouncing with me, but at the same time, I've been doing a lot more writing than in the last month that I've done, like, over the past year. Because, you know, I just, like, kind of had that want and that need to actually, like, continue on ideas and finish up things. But at the same token, I kind of got a little burned out working with the, like, same ideas, the, like, same stories, the same voice. So I decided to kind of give myself a huge breather and then write something that's very non-literal.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh.
Well, with that, we can jump into your story. And so what else do you want to say about it before we go into it?
I will say that it is definitely... Okay, this is my third draft of it.
Right.
The first one was a lot more metaphorical.
It was more?
Yeah. Like, it was to the point that, like, I knew what I was going for, but of course, I had to go back through and fix it up because I wasn't sure if the point was getting across.
Okay. We'll talk about if it does now, but
well, I mean, after really read, I'm going to ask him, but did you get it?
I didn't try that hard, to be fair. I was just kind of like shaken. Anyway, we'll just okay, not shaken, but I don't want to say confused because it was. Yeah, let's just say that. Maybe when I listen to it, it'll hit me in the brain and it'll all connect.
All right, sure thing. Well, then I guess with that, I can go ahead and roll on into it. There are no further questions.
All right. Trigger warning for existential dread.
The title of this one is The Next Day. Open. A dark night sky. Close. A pub crawl. Open. Where'd they go? Close. Much needed sleep. A light flashes in the dark. Salvation sparse and crimson embers flutter from the light. Butterflies. Decorated in colors that shift hue and saturation. Wings erupting supernovas, deciding fates and doling karma. They spiral out from the light in an age-old formation, floating past in the endless light. One garners the will to edge close enough to grace me. Would I become light? An atom away, its touch sets my consciousness alight, like a raging fire spanning the entire wilderness. Lost in its gold, my mind expands. I'm fading in and out, stuck between two monoliths, two gods, and two worlds. The choice was not mine, taken from me by someone I did not know. Or was it my brother? Or a lover? Did I have a lover? Did I own anything? The feelings drain out of me, slowly, ever so purposeful. A long, troublesome burn, numbed with the snuffed out flame. I bloomed into a mosaic of color, closer even now to the light, then falling. Back and back in a weightless vacuum, a chasm, deep enough to engulf all pain and narrow enough to let the rivers of joy run free. The butterflies are gone now, their light, their salvation, farther than the memories of life before this chasm. I can't see the river, nor hear nor sense it, as if it dried up with the butterflies leaving. It sets in quickly that the worst pain is lack thereof. A string is carved in the distance, molested by the tune maker, its somber sounds shocking my senses to life, seizing my synapses, gorging them till rupture. A pain all too similar reminds me of something I forgot, something I should have remembered. Should remember, but is fading, fading, fading. God's clock struck noon, and I was new. The void has made a blind bat out of me. Lungs long blackened and bloodied. Skin leathered with age. My body has lost meaning. Reduced into a husk. Cracked and broken by the void. I was close, wasn't I? I saw the light. Graced the butterflies. They chose me. They chose me. I felt the nova inside. The compounded possibility and unexpired energy. It was my time to decide the path and dole the fates. At least I wanted it to be so. Or was it a fluke? An old soul's diehard hope, contouring the real and the fictional into one all-purpose thought. The physical lasts less than a second. The things of emotion and an old habit decays, peels back the layers of experience and fear to sprout a glimpse of the key. Find nirvana. A sense beyond the self. A reality within the flowing waters of joy and the exhausting pleasure of pain incarnate. That has to be it. Why else would the flesh be temporary if not just a transit to true purpose? Waiting. The point is not to be chosen, but to choose. Waiting. Since the first breath, there has been trial, pain, and problem. But the spark in the system that corrupted the darkness begot life was a joyous noise, waiting. There are things greater than the warmth of light. Salvation isn't a place or purpose or elixir, but the amalgamation of the 6 planes above the physical to experience it and complete the cycle. I am merely halfway, not eager for the before or after, just waiting for my number. A stray ember finds its way down, hovering close, waiting at a distance. I pay it no mind. Something once lusted after has of no use to me then. The longer I waited, the closer it came, testing me, deciding my path, executing its alien judgment. Finally, it landed on me, more so into me, reached out past the chill of the void to evoke a contract. I chose it, finally ready for the light. Kaleidoscope vision takes me up and in between fragments of light along the wings of fate into something so old but brand new. A rhythmic beat woke me up. I was warmer than I've ever felt before. I could feel, but through a whole new set of synapses, faster, sharper, and more novice than before. I stretched, grabbed, but could not see, not yet, nor did it matter. The warmth was too soothing. There was motion, then a crippling cold, not too dissimilar to the void, that unfurled my lungs and gave my body meaning once again. I screamed, not in pain, but in a river of life, shaking off the long-stayed grasp of death, opening my eyes to gold and glitter in a blinding white light. A joyous noise.
Interesting.
Okay, that's that's a lot. Wow. Okay. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful story. About rebirth, which I thought was beautiful. But this whole journey is it's a lot. I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I just mean like it's almost like an over sensation. That's not the word for that. Overload of sensations of this journey. It feels like poetry. A lot more of the story. Like it feels like every sentence is metaphor, and I think it's very beautiful. I really enjoyed the journey. Like when I'm losing my words and to say things, that's just because like I don't even know where to start. Like this is, I don't know. It's very deep. It's just what it feels like. Capital D.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's definitely something that I really wanted to try out, and yeah, I mean, I don't know, because I've always been very fascinated with the idea of like that moment right after you take your last breath, and what the rest of it can be, and I don't know. I just had like this picture of this void that's filled with meaning, but it's just like a pitch black place, and kind of metaphorically making the like butterflies salvation as of what I said, but like not the kind of salvation that most people talk about when they do talk about salvation. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I was gonna say the same thing as Matthias. It's a lot of like very sensational sort of details. Like there's a lot of things that you technically really can't feel because you've never felt those kinds of things. But like felt them nonetheless sort of deal. You had this one sentence in there that I'm trying to, it sets in quickly that the worst pain is lack thereof, and I was like, oh, everything about that sentence was just like just so nice, you know? The rhythm to it and just the impact. But I got this huge reminder of Ginsberg when you were reading this. Like, it felt a lot like beat poetry, but as like prose. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
For those who don't know, who is Ginsberg?
I don't know.
Who's Ginsberg?
so Allen Ginsberg
for the listeners, I mean.
was, of course. Allen Ginsberg was a notorious beat poet, and like I want to say 1920s. Let me look it up so I don't sound stupid. That was a phrase.
It was
throughout the 50s. So
50s, okay.
Yeah, so beat poetry and the beat generation was this huge literary movement that started out in sort of the California area. Mm-hmm. You had Kerouac, I think that's how you say it, but you had Cassidy, but mainly Ginsberg, I think, is the one that we kind of remember today as being, the big hotshot of the time. He was crazy. He's very openly gay, and especially in his work. There's one line in one of his poems where I can't remember the exact phrasing, so this is like very paraphrased, where he's like, I'm putting my queer shoulder to the wheel when discussing America. So it's like at the end of the poem, and it's this big, like, sort of like, fuck you, like, it's so cool. So just like the way you were reading it, and the huge the sensation feelings, and just the rhythm to it felt a lot
it's
like
got really good rhythm.
poetry.
Actually, when I first read it, I read the beginning out loud because I thought it was actually I thought it rhymed. I thought that it was in song. Especially at the very beginning, right? You have open, a dark night sky, close, a pub crawl, open, where'd they go? Close, much need sleep. Like, it feels like it's about to become a song.
Honestly, it could be a intro. But I mean, on that point, I have a question for y'all. I know what I was trying to go for, but in that beginning, what did you think? What did you think it was?
The first time I read it, I thought it was just imagery of life in general, but it seems to me pretty obvious that the person dies. I assume in a car crash or something like that. Just because it's nighttime, they were doing a pub crawl, right? So they're drunk. Where'd they go? They're alone for whatever reason, and then much needed sleep is they die.
Okay.
Is it? I mean, Taylor, go ahead, and then Jarvis, you can tell us how close that is.
I was thinking once we got to the Salvation Sparse and Crimson Embers, that bit, I was thinking it was sort of the creation of man. When we got to bits, trying to find it, once you started mentioning God's clock struck noon and I was new, so I was thinking this is the creation of the universe, but then it started mentioning death, so I said, okay, well, maybe instead of creation, this is the afterlife. And I think that played well into what it actually was, which is, if I'm right, the sense of rebirth, but there is that whole plane of what is life and what is death, and how do you know what the difference is, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's definitely reading in a lot deeper than at least in the beginning. I mean, for the rest of it, those are the things I was trying to play with, but in the beginning, it's homie got, I guess, I'm thinking mugged and either shot or stabbed.
Okay, yeah.
And then the friends that he were with just left because they were all drunk and scared. And he's opening his eyes, and he sees the beautiful night, a nice guy, he closes them, and then he thinks of the last fleeting thought that he has, which is what just happened. Open them. He doesn't see any of his friends or people that he was with.
Yeah,
and then closes and dies.
Yeah, I definitely got the feeling that it was blinking. Like that. I mean, open, close. Obviously, it's supposed to be that, but it felt like that way in the pacing. It felt like open, heartbeat, close, open, heartbeat, close. So I thought the beginning was really beautiful. And going back on the sensation, it's interesting because, I could picture everything, right? And so I think when you listen to this, listeners can tell us if we're wrong, but like we can picture every moment of this, right? Back and back into a weightless vacuum, a chasm deep enough to engulf all pain and narrow enough to let the rivers of joy run free. Like that's very visual imagery, right? Like rivers of joy, right? Like even if you can't picture what a river of joy actually looks like, you can picture a river, right, running free. So even though we don't know, we might not completely grasp everything that's like happening in the abstract, right? We can still follow the story along and be along for the ride. Which is how a lot of this felt. Like an atom away, speaking about the butterfly, its touch sets my consciousness alight like a raging fire spanning the entire wilderness. It's like, I don't know, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it like sounds awesome. I kind of saw it as like, definitely like a bad thing. Like everything that he knows is on fire.
Okay,
which is probably why he goes down the dark path. And I don't know. I was trying to play with the idea that he wasn't ready for the next life. That he was too eager for it, which is why he had to go into the chasm, become a blind bat, basically, and find nirvana. And I know when I was working with it, or at least in the first idea, I had this like really larger story of him having to go through different lives to where like in one, maybe he's a dog, or maybe he's like a bug, or maybe he's a tree, and like with each life he will learn a different lesson that leads him into becoming a new person on the day after he died.
Yeah, that would have been cool to see too. I think this works really well on its own, but I think on the other hand, I do think that would like have added like a bit of clarity. Like bringing us back into a reality, even if it's not ours, right? Like into the reality of being a dog and stuff like that. I think that might ground us a little bit more. I mean, I think like if there's a problem with this, like this feels like poetry. This feels like something that you sit down to like figure out right now. It doesn't feel like, and this isn't necessarily a negative thing, but it doesn't feel like something that you just like get on the immediate first thing. It's something that you kind of like you read over and over for a while to figure out each section. Because I get that it's a rebirth, right? Like I definitely got that, especially at the end. You make it pretty like comfortably clear. Like you don't like spell it out for us, but you do put the dots out for us to connect. Which I think it's really well done. Like it's just the right amount of like. We can tell what it is, but we don't feel like you're beating us over the head with it.
Exactly. And I didn't want to spend too much time on like the whole birth part. Yeah. Because I don't know. I don't want to.
Okay, sure.
Because you know, like I could have gone into like a detail of like how it happened, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well, birth is gross, so.
Birth is pretty grody.
I mean, it is the miracle of life, and everyone who goes through it is a hero of time. But
it doesn't mean that the miracle of life is pretty.
Yeah,
miracles are messy,
and the
miracles.
The natural
messy.
World is kind of horrible, but that's a story for another time.
That's a story for next.
Yeah, I'll have an opportunity to speak at that at some point. But yeah, I feel like if you spaced out the very abstract parts, like God's clock struck noon, and I was new, Like that section, I wasn't like God's clock struck noon sounded awesome, but I wasn't. Yeah. I didn't know what it meant either.
Well, see, like when I wrote that, I really liked that line.
No, I do too. But I just don't fully understand its meaning, and that's like okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I find that the issue is, like, there's a train of thought that I normally go down that, so, like, how I see it, right, is that in the good old-fashioned theological tale of the beginning of the earth, right, God created the world within 7 days. But through science, we have found out that it took, like, 1 billion years, right? But in my kind of reasoning with it is that maybe the 7 days is much more abstract.
Yeah, it totally
where
could be.
Maybe it's 7 days to a god.
Yeah.
Which means that if God's clock struck noon, that means that it's a variety and number of millennia that this person's soul has been down in this void.
Sure.
But at least that's my train of thought on it. But of course, that's not an easy thing to really come to unless you know, I guess.
Well, I kind of got that. I mean, I didn't get that it was an immense amount of time, but I did get that it was like an abstract notion of time. Like I knew that it wasn't actually noon, right? For me, I think what came across is just that it's time, right, or something like that. But anyway, like I'm not saying ever to like I'm not saying at all to like take it out or anything like that. I'm just saying
definitely
that for me, like if you wanted to have like the average person just like grasp the meaning, or at least like grasp the greater meaning a little bit more, having some of those grounded parts like the rebirth into different lives might make that a little easier. I don't know, but like here's the thing though, it's like with poetry, and I would classify this in the same kind of analysis, the same kind of editing.
I would too.
Is that poetry is extremely hard, at least for me, to... I mean, I'm not trained in poetry whatsoever, so this is by completely, like, as an outsider, one who has, like, edited poems, like, twice. But it seems, like, really tough for me because who am I to say that, like, this isn't the meaning that you meant, right? Like it's so, since it's so based in interpretation, it seems really hard to me to say that someone should change one part just to like make it more obvious to that one person. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, makes perfect sense. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, like the odd place that I think it kind of operates in, because I don't know, like when I like. As I said, right, this was my third draft. So for the first draft, it was kind of nonsense. It was the same thing, but it was actually longer, and it went into a lot of metaphorical details trying to construct a picture of what this like afterlife void place really looks like. But then I was like, oh wait, I have to read this first and foremost, and I want to read all that. And also, I wanted it to have a sense to where, like, it would be closer to possibly, like, you know, get it.
Yeah.
Beyond it just being this kind of, like, metaphorical tale of a soul passing through the afterlife. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not terribly deep, but I know I spent a lot of time in certain phrases to try and give it some more depth as to like the meaning.
I think it feels pretty deep. I think this counts as deep.
Deep.
Taylor, do you know what I mean about poetry? About the analysis thing?
Do you know poetry?
No, you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think I know a little bit. Yeah. I know a little. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid point that you made, Matthias. It is, I remember from my workshop classes, like, that was often one of the bigger debates that we would have over people's work is, you know, should we change, or should we suggest to someone to change this line in their poem because 3 people in the class didn't get it, or do we focus on other aspects of it? You know, things like that. And I think ultimately when it comes to poetry, there's what the author intends, and then there's what the reader gets. And I think that's a constant struggle throughout, any type of writing. But with
Right.
poetry, it's a lot more blurred. So I don't know. I think when I was workshopping my own stuff and putting it up for people to see, I think how I ultimately made my decisions regarding that is I made sure there was enough clues. Like poetry is, like, I viewed it as sort of a mystery, like a something that people could solve, like a riddle.
Right.
And I made sure that there were enough clues contextually for people to figure it out. And that way, if I still got complaints or, a couple of people going, well, I didn't get this, it didn't so much come to an issue to me. Like, I wouldn't lose sleep over, well, maybe I could have written it differently. It was, well, the foundation's laid out, and I know that, if they keep working at it, then it'll be a little more clear.
Yeah.
Now, if I feel like I've put down the clues and everyone that gives me, feedback is still confused, I know I need more.
Right.
But yeah, that's ultimately how I did it, and what changed my sort of anxieties about poetry and it being hard to interpret was just, well, at the end of the day, I know what I meant to be out there. If someone interprets something differently, that's also okay, but I know I laid enough for them to also be able to see what I wanted them to see from it.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that helps at all.
No, it definitely does. It sounds like, I mean, this whole thing is a conversation we could like jump into for like a whole hour, honestly, about interpretation and how much you need to lay out the clues in your own writing. Definitely something to talk about again another time.
For sure. I think it's one of those where the answers and people's opinions always shift.
Yeah. I want to go through and talk about the repetition in your story, which is wonderful. I like the beginning, the open, close, like the sense of pacing there is awesome. And I love some of the questions that come up from the characters and narration, like from the beginning, would I become light? Which is, I don't know, it struck me in a way. Like would they rise, I guess, is
like what is next?
Yeah.
What is after?
And then the opposite, obviously, then falling, the opposite of going up to the light. And so you have like the open, close, and then later on you have the waiting, interspersed with different ideas. And one of those, and before that you had fading, from remembering. So I love how that comes back in so many ways. Like it's this 3 beat of 3 beats, right? And one thing that I think is like carried forward in the waiting beats is the point about choosing, because in the beginning it's in the middle they're like the soul is getting angry because they were chosen by the butterflies, the light, but now they're in the darkness, and then they come to the realization that the point is not to be chosen, but to choose, which I think is an awesome line. Very evocative of kind of learning about yourself and choosing to be better is what it seems like.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed actually like playing around with repetition, because I don't know, like when in something that you read, if there is repetition, you can do a lot of things there to kind of set the pace. So like in the beginning there was open close, but then they had their like own line dedicated. So as you read it, naturally the reader would definitely read it a lot slower if it was put into one single block of text. So with that like slowness and that care with the words. I wanted the reader to kind of carry that throughout the entire thing, because I don't think you could really read this fast, if that makes sense.
Yeah, with the beginning for sure, because each one has a pause, right, with that line break. So you have to pause between each one, and that like makes you kind of take into the idea more than if it was just part of a description. Like if it was a dark night sky was above me as I walked down the street. Like the dark night sky is like just a moment in that sentence. Like it's very quick. But since it's on a sentence on its own, we're forced to linger on it and really think about what that means for a second, or feel it at the very least.
Really feel the like air of the like dark night sky.
This felt very different from your typical voice, by the way. Like I felt a touch, just a very tiny touch of the normal. I don't want to say angsty, but the kind of like.
Oh, thanks, dude.
No, well, I mean you do noir stuff, right? And that's kind of like what I'm talking about when I say angsty, like the kind of like darker, like aware of reality kind of thing, pessimistic view. And there was just the tiniest touch of that in the drama of it, but otherwise it was very different. So, good job on trying something new.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that I find that's the entire point of the exercise itself, and the point of why I wrote it is because, as I said, I wanted a break from my horrible, just monotonous voice that
it's not horrible or monotonous. It's just very singular. Like it's the one voice.
Yeah, exactly. And you know how I've been switching around with different things. So
now your next story again needs to be about a cheerleader from the perspective of a cheerleader and not making fun of a cheerleader.
Listen, buddy, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if that's possible.
You should try it.
I mean, I will try it one day, but I cannot promise that I will not make fun of said person.
It is hard to not make fun of people.
Yeah,
that's very positive.
Making fun of people is like the best part of any day.
Okay,
they're like, hey, look at that guy. He's short.
Yeah, we were the bullies from those '80s movies.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Okay.
Smoke this cigarette.
Yeah. Peer pressure.
Okay. Yeah, what else can we say about your story? I feel like there's so much more, but
is there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, I feel like at the very least someone could dive really deep into it and like do a paragraph of analysis for every sentence,
I find that could be a possibility. I don't know, granted, wrote it in 30 minutes, and as I started, I found out how hard it is to, not only write within 30 minutes, but to write this, this metaphorical pseudo poem type deal that's dealing with a lot of non-physical, non-typical elements. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. It was a nice...
exercise. Well, you know what? I've been avoiding saying this the whole time because I've never taken acid, but this felt like an acid trip. It felt I know that's a trope. That's a descriptive trope. But what I mean is that
like acid trip.
It was like a lot of imagery shifting from one to another. It felt dreamlike, and what I wanted to ask was how the fuck did you write this? How did you I feel like you were going. It was 4 a.m. and you drank 5 coffees and this was your actual thought process in that moment and you just decided to write it down.
Honestly, that seems like a much cooler story than the actual one. In fact, it was noon. Okay. And I had been drinking green tea all day. But I don't know. I think it really stems from just me always thinking too much and going really far with a lot of ideas and trying to peel back the curtains and get deeper into what the true meaning is. And also, I don't know, for the last 2 years, I've just been really thinking about death, which is
okay. Hell yeah.
Which I mean, it's not in like a bad vein, because I used to think about death in a much worse way.
Right.
But we're not going to talk about that. but no, like, I don't know. I was just thinking about, like, yeah, dang, I'm 20. I'm a quarter of the way done. Like,
right.
What is going to happen after that, like, last breath? And then, like, from there, I kind of just started to construct what I would think would be like a nice middle ground, because some people say, oh, after you die, it's going to be all baskets of hay and strawberries. But I don't know. I've found that I've kind of grown a more pessimistic view of the like afterlife, but like a hopeful one, to where there like is that other side, but you're gonna have to go through hell to like get there, I guess, because as it says in there, like, I think the like scariest thing ever is when you just don't feel
right.
And I kind of see that as the afterlife, just that lack thereof, I guess. So, following that train of thought led me to want to like write this and writing it. So,
yeah,
a drastically more nerdy story as to how I got here.
Yeah. So if you were to rewrite it, Travis, what would you change?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. I was about to suggest that.
I mean, like, I don't know. I would not change anything that's currently there. I would definitely add, because like if I did have more time and had the will and the want to like go with it further, as I said before, I was thinking of a much wider story where this character goes through multiple lives and multiple different beings to kind of build up to this like all-purpose statement, or this all-purpose idea on what existence really is. Mm-hmm. And then him, by answering that question, he can truly move on and he can choose. But of course, that would take longer than 30 minutes. So if I were to go back and rewrite it, I would probably work a lot more on the stuff after he's in the void, which is definitely most of it. But I would like to add a lot more things that I guess are tangible, if that makes sense.
Right. Okay.
But yeah. That's it?
Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know. I feel like sometimes we should add trigger warnings for stuff.
What are you talking about?
Well, like, this one isn't not, like, gory or, like, horror in any way, but there's, like, the existential stuff, and there's some people that, like, get fucked up about it. So, so I'm gonna copy-paste this to the beginning. Trigger warning for existential dread.
Yeah.
Or maybe not even dread, like, but...
Yeah, just, like, the concept of existentialism, which is one that I really love. And I don't know, as I wrote it, I kind of got the same feeling that I got when I write a therapy script. So
okay, what's a therapy script?
So a way that I have dealt with all of my depression and like anger is by what?
I mean, I just said okay. I'm acknowledging the things that you said. I feel like those things need to be acknowledged.
I'm about to take you out.
Oh no.
But no, yeah, so a way that I basically deal with a lot of difficult things for me is I would charter out like probably like 10 hours. I would sit down and then I would just open my mind and just start writing. Mm-hmm. Whether it is a script or a poem or a piece of writing or just whatever. And through that, I found by getting all of it out, or as much as I can bear myself to give, I'm kind of releasing myself from the hold that those emotions have on me, and I come out feeling much better.
Okay, that's a really good way of putting that. I'll have to try that.
So it's a therapy script.
Yeah, that's
because
great.
Because actual therapists cost money, and I ain't got that.
Okay. We should transition on because we're now at an hour 20. So,
no, more on me.
Yeah. I do feel like there's a lot that we could spend even more time on this and on tangents from it. But yeah,
Yeah, but no, let's go ahead and move on to our next special reader, who is someone that you're totally used to, and is Vetty Rocker, Buddy Boy, Matthias Mason.
Okay. All right.
So, what'd you write about? Do you have anything that you really want to say before we go and roll, or is it just raw?
It took me a while to write this. Like, I went through a couple drafts, which were like trash and like not even worth mentioning. Like they just didn't go anywhere. But this one is about a forest. And I just wanted, I wanted to do something a little bit more serious than what I've done before. And so there's only a little bit of dialogue in the story, and it's much more description focused. And I think I'm gonna keep trying to do stuff like this. Maybe still put in the dialogue, but like I don't know, get a little bit more serious with what I write. Not that there's anything wrong with the other stuff. I just mean like practice the serious side.
Okay, I see. Because I mean, yeah, like with a lot of your pieces, there is this kind of like comedic angle,
yeah,
but when it's on like a very serious topic, like I remember it was like a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the one with Alphonse and Gregor, but there was this really nice comedic tone to it. But of course you were talking about a murderer trying to blackmail someone else, so I would like to see what the serious Matthias can do.
Yeah. Well, because the second story I ever wrote for So-Called Writers, which was a podcast that Doof Media put on, which was this. This is a rip-off of that.
It's this.
Yeah. So this is the spiritual sequel to it. But So-Called Writers, I think it was like the second episode, something like that. Maybe a little bit more than that, third or fourth, maybe. But they... I wrote my first good story from it, and it was a serious story about a toy maker, a guy who, an old man who's making toys for his daughter, and then
that was such a
at
good
the end,
story.
we realized that the daughter is not alive. And one day I will go back and rewrite it to be even better. But it was the first good story I ever wrote, and it was serious, so I want to hit that again, right?
Hell yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely.
yeah. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start.
All right, cool. I will mute.
Yeah. This story is called The Forest. The forest once stretched from saltwater to saltwater. It was so enormous that parts of it were unaware of the other far-flung parts. A sea of green waving in the wind, home to small, darting creatures and larger ones. Now, though, the forest has a clear definition. It lies at the outskirts of the city of Darlton, in the county of Darlton. Its shape is a rough square bordered by the city, the factory district, the rail yard, and a long string of suburb. But the forest does not know these things. It only knows that it is smaller than it once was, and that it ends there, and there, and there, and there. It feels uneasy about these changes, inasmuch as the forest can feel. It does not understand the things that lie outside of itself. But it does understand what it is. It knows the parts of itself. The birds that go from branch to branch and eat the fruit and seeds. The small, furry animals that live in the trees and under the ground. The larger mammals that sometimes venture out of the bounds of the forest, but make their home within. The seeds in the soil and in the brush. And the trees, of course. The trees are getting old now. They tower and cluster together, enough to throw the whole floor into shade. But many of them are half dead with age. The forest itches for rebirth, like a snake yearns to scrape off its molted skin. In a dry storm, lightning strikes parts of the forest. One is lucky enough to burst in sparks as it shatters a tree. The sparks drift to a patch of fallen leaves, long dead and long dried. The sparks catch life, and grow, and smolder. The wind blows, and the embers flare once, twice, and then inflame, bright and dancing and alive. The flames grow, and the forest sighs. The fire grows, hidden in the wilderness. First the one tree, then two, then the grove, spreading further, burning, eating, cleaning. Smoke rises, and animals flee to other parts of the forest, already shaken by the thunder, and now by the flames. However, just as the wildfire is starting to really grow, something strange happens. Something flies overhead. A bird, though not one of the forest. And then it rains, all at once, in only one area. It's the same amount of rain as when the river floods, poured all at once out of the sky and directly onto the fire. They are extinguished, sending a new cloud to the air. Only embers remain, a few tongues of flame shielded by brush. They begin to grow as well, until other mammals come in, animals unafraid of fire. They arrive and spit water from their hands onto the dying flames. The forest is uncomfortable. These are strange happenings, and now it feels as if a scratch was started and stopped abruptly. Now the forest is only more aware of the problem, of all the dead weight on its soil. But it breathes, and while the feeling remains, there are other things to focus on. The new patch of fertile open sky is seeded. Grasses grow, and then shrubs, and then the saplings sprout above it all. A section of fresh growth dashes to catch up to the elders all around it. These events happen several times over the years. Different sources of flame, but usually lightning. Some fires die on their own, others are doused by the unexpected waters. But the forest keeps aging. It feels ancient now, like it is more bone than growth. Trees, in actuality, are mostly dead, even when they are alive. Only the leaves, the buds, and the layer just under the skin of bark breathes water and grows. The wood, the bones, have long stopped changing. And that is how the forest feels. Stagnant, like bones left to dry or a pool left to freeze. When it sighs, the noise is scratchy, caught on so many branches and leaves left to fester. The forest has always been old, but it has never felt that way. One of the strange mammals is deep in the forest now. They take walks sometimes, through the forest, coming in from one area of not forest, taking a long loop along the deer paths, and coming out to the other areas of not forest. This one is carrying a spark of flame with it, held at the end of a cylinder of fiber. The forest is dimly aware of the contents. The plant tobacco, amongst a stew of other things, many toxic. Where did the mammal get the spark? Did it catch lightning? As the forest takes this in, the mammal drops the spark. It stomps on the cylinder, but misses the ember, before walking further along its path out of the forest. The forest takes this opportunity. It drifts some leaves closer to the ember, breathes on it. The leaves, 3 seasons dead, catch into ready flame, which spread to the base of one tree, and then outward. The fire starts, but it is different than the ones before. It feels ready. The flames spread quickly, darting from one tree to another like squirrels. The flames eat their fill of decades-too-old trees, detritus on the ground, and more. Animals flee in all directions. But no matter. They will come back in time. Burning is more important. The rain does not fall for a long time. This is good, and the forest pushes the conflagration further. A ring forms, burning out faster and faster, and at its heart, an inferno. Trees collapse, groaning and spraying sparks into the air. The sky fills with smoke. By the time the downpours of rain begin, it is too late. A grove is doused, only for it to be dried by its neighboring flame and ignited anew. The forest elates in the fire. The inferno spreads beyond the limits of the forest, into the lands of the strange mammals, where the animals fled. It burns and burns, migrating ever outwards. But this is no matter. All that matters is that the forest is ash, and the dirt is black with death and sleeping life. By next morning, the forest is in the ground, sleeping. When the next rains come, it will wake, and everything will be green and new and alive again. There is controversy brewing online as the Darlton city government tries to spin the recent forest fire that devastated the Darlton suburbs into a surprising gift. City government says that now that the land is cleared, there are plans for a water park that will bring tourists and life into the town. More at 11.
I absolutely loved the point of view that you used here.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's this like mix of a like very alien point of view, especially when he's talking about the people that go in and out of the forest. And I really like how you explained them and like gave us hints that they were of course people, but didn't beat us over the head. I don't know. I just really loved it. I've never really seen a piece written from the perspective of a forest, which is very nice.
Well, thank you.
And that ending was so cool.
Yeah.
The ending of the forest of the newscast.
The newscast. Just
Okay.
a like nice little bow, you know?
Yeah. Of
Because
things
that's
aren't
what
good.
they do.
You just
Yeah.
have to spin it.
I wanted to add a little bit of tragedy, because that's how you make serious pieces.
Yes.
I mean, at the very least, the irony was important. That the forest is ignorant of what's outside of its borders, and so it doesn't know what's going to happen to it.
Yeah.
But I really wanted, like, the whole idea from the beginning was how fires are actually good, and that nature is used to destruction and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, because it would be really normal. It would be too expected for the forest to be like, oh no, a fire, please, someone save me. But like, that's not actually, like, nature likes when things get destroyed and can start over.
Because they can start over. You know, you can build a whole new forest that's better now. But instead of a forest growing there, they're going to put a Hawaiian Falls or something.
Yeah, they're going to pave it all over with asphalt and then put some slides. So,
which, I mean, hey, that's how every suburb grows. I know they just did that to Pflugerville, and I was kind of disappointed, but I went to the water park once, and it was extremely decent.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed writing the whole thing a lot. I was trying not to make the whole, like, mammals are being humans thing, like, not, like, too contrived. Like, I wanted to be like, I didn't want people to feel like, oh, okay, we get it, they're humans and the forest doesn't get it, but well,
I think it was like, I think it was sprinkled in very, very nicely. I do like how you explained in this like foreign point of view a like person smoking a like cig and then just like leaving it. And and like how you can see the like forest is actively trying to like figure out what this is, but it knows that is a animal, and they have a cylinder of something from a tobacco plant. And I like also liked how like it's very different from like what I would have thought, but the forest is helping the fire by blowing leaves on it, and like saying that the like animals will definitely come back, but the most important thing right now is this fire, and how the like forest wants it, which is a very different and very interesting take on forest fires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I one thing that I wanted to do that was fun was making dropping a cigarette in the forest actually a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, like, isn't it always a good thing?
Oh yeah, for sure. It for less as the ground with poison and yep.
I mean, like, technically that's where they're supposed to be.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Debatable. One particular section that I really liked, that I wrote. One thing that just felt really right was so I described the forest like sighing a couple times, right? Mm-hmm. And then after it gets old, I described that when it sighs, it feels like the noise is scratchy, caught on so many branches and leaves. Like I wanted it to be like it feels like its throat is rasping, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if that came across, but that was the goal.
Yeah. On that, was it like so? Like, did you want it to sound like that because the forest is old, or is that just how you feel a forest would?
No, the forest is old, right? Because if it was younger, it would be more like a bunch of like leaves fluttering.
Yeah,
but now it's just like branches scraping against each other and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So, like in the beginning, you said that you wanted to basically, go for a more serious story, or at least just have that tone. when you wrote, and this definitely is that. While you were reading it, and then also while I read it, I can tell there was a lot of care to like each word and each phrase, but there was also like a bit of a comedy, especially when you were talking about the like humans, only because I don't know, I find it quite funny when like humans are described as, you know, animals, and also the whole cigarette thing, and how some of them go in one way that is not forest, and then go out in like another way that is also not forest. I just really liked how the forest only knows the forest.
Yeah,
which seems very realistic if, you know, a forest could actually speak.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about it being humor, but I did very much like writing those sections.
But I mean, like, it's not like it overpowers the tone of the story. It's really just like a nice sprinkle, which actually, like, sort of, I don't know, rounds it out. It brings out the more, like, you know, tragic tones to it, is also having the other, you know, the little bits of comedy to reflect off of.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
You know, now that I think about it, I really, now to really push the tragic thing, I think I could have had a bit at the end where the forest wants to thank the mammal for leaving the spark, like maybe treating it like a gift or something like that.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, thank you, human, for letting me burn. I really appreciate it. Falls asleep and then wakes up covered in tarmac. Like,
oh god.
Like, yeah, it just seems really.
That would have been awesome, but also horrifying. So, since the forest is now a like water park, will the forest slowly know what a water park is?
Well, the forest is not a water park. The water park is a water park. The forest
so the water park is just on top of the forest.
Yes.
Well, I mean, like if they plant a like single tree in that entire water park, would the forest be a part of that tree, or is the forest still underneath the water park?
Well, the way that I'm viewing it is that like each kind of place has its own concept of itself, basically. Okay. I mean, I don't know if the water park would, because it's artificial and not alive,
not organic.
But yeah, since it only knows itself, like I had this kind of like big idea, like at the beginning where I'm describing how the forest used to be, where it went from salt water to salt water, right, ocean to ocean. Yeah. It's supposed to be like it's just this giant organism almost, so large that it doesn't know itself, but now it really does know itself because of how small it is. Mm-hmm. And there was, I don't know, I didn't add it in, but in my mind it was like, there's other parts of nature also have this feeling, but they're not part of the same thing. Like the forest knows of the fields, but it's not the fields.
Yeah. So the fields is a totally different thing, and the fields maybe even has its own voice, but the forest knows the forest.
Yeah.
One line that I really, really liked was, but the forest does not know these things. It only knows that it is smaller than it once was, and that it ends there and there and there and there. I really liked how you kind of explained it, even though, you know, this is what you just said, but I liked how you did the ends there and there and there and there, because it definitely like paints this larger area that the forest occupies. I don't know, I just like the uses that you use in the repetition, because it definitely just like gives you that image so much more finer than any other way you could have explained it.
Okay, yeah. Taylor, do you have anything to say about it?
I thought it was highly visual, like whereas Jarvis's was very like, you know, you could almost feel what was going on. Here, I'm pretty impressed by how clearly we can see everything without it being like, sometimes I feel when people try to do the visual aspects, they get too caught up in the details, and that's usually when I just start skipping sections of the story, because I'm like, I get it. But I feel like here you did a good job of making sure to, like, I never felt that, like, going through it. Like, every sentence was a new visual, and every sentence was a captivating enough visual to where I wanted to get the full picture. I didn't feel like I get it, you know?
Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah, one thing that I was taking care is about, like, having kind of moments between, like, a long, like the beginning is this long overview of, like, what it's like to be a forest, right? What its current existence is like, right? Mm-hmm. And then we go into, instead of saying sometimes forests, like, fires happen, and then, like, describing what all the fires are like, I decided to go into one particular lightning strike fire. Right. And then ending that, and then putting a little bit of time, and then doing another one, rather than, like... the other part was that I didn't, like, completely go into, like, oh, on this particular day, it was sunny outside, and then a storm came in, and the clouds were like this and that. Like, I wanted to make sure it was just, like, the stuff that the forest, like, experiences.
Yeah. You, like, definitely focus a lot throughout on the action, which gave the entire thing a really good flow, because you went from set piece to set piece and wasn't really bogged down with all of the extra mumbo jumbo that, of course, in, like, a lot of other pieces would definitely be added in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if I were to redo this, I think I would... I'm not entirely sure. I think I would have more human and forest interaction, and more like the indirect effects. Like, I have this idea of, like, animals coming back and bringing stuff from outside of the forest. Like, it finding in birds' nests, there's, like, stuff, like, there's, like, plastic, and the forest being really confused because this is, like, sort of related to something that's deep in the ground, but it's in a completely different form. And how, okay, here's something weird. Metal, like, how we use it, like, it's completely unnatural. Like, not like even a normal piece of, like, of metal, like a straight, like, polished piece of metal. Like, there is no place on Earth where that occurred naturally, right? Like,
yeah, we have
like,
to,
or it's a bunch of, like,
process.
Yeah, it's a bunch of, like, it's a bumpy lump of the metal, and it's, like, pitted and, like, weird looking, right? And so just the fact that it's, like, in a shaped form is extremely weird on its own. Like, I don't know. There's just something about that just seems really strange to me. So stuff like that, where the forest would maybe learn a little bit more, and maybe have a little bit more foreshadowing about what's going to happen at the end, or something like that. Anyway,
definitely. Would the forest look at, like, plastic and, like, metals in the same positive light that it looks at the fire, or would it just be more confused on?
I think it would just be more confused, because it's not like, I mean, the forest isn't like, oh no, the animals are dying. Like, it doesn't actually care about that. It just cares about, like, being able to exist, I think. Yeah. And, like, new growth. It does not. Like, I mean, all the trees died, right? And it's totally fine with that. Even though it is the trees. So, like, the cycle of, like, death, life and death is, like, not important to it. It's just that it's important that it continues, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway,
rest in peace, forest.
Yeah, ripping ash, ripping.
And it's all because one person wanted to bum a stove.
Well, that's the thing, is that, like, this would have happened eventually, right? Like, this happens in real life. Like,
theory.
Yeah,
the government did it.
Well, the fires in California and stuff like that are, like, so bad. Not just because, like, it's drier now, but because, like, we've stopped so many of the fires, right? So, like, more of it has built up. I think I read something about how the Native Americans, what they would do, or some anyway, not all of them, obviously. I think this was more East Coast, actually.
Every single last one.
But they would, like, stay in one part of the forest for a while, right? And then after, I don't know, I don't know what the time period is, but after a time, then they would leave for another, but they would set it on fire when they leave, right? So all of the trees would burn, they would, like, fertilize the soil, right? And when they come back and at the end of the next cycle, right, everything's new and fresh again.
Huh. That's smart.
Yeah, so.
Dang, they, like, really had it down, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, that's all about my story. We can move on to Taylor's story now.
So,
oh goodness,
what'd you write? Why do we like it?
I think I wrote some Arctic Monkeys fan fiction.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I wanted to save that for like the second your story was over. But we'll talk about that at the end. That's just Jason.
Yeah. Okay. So mine is called, and I came up with this title after I published it because I realized, oh yeah, in typical fashion, I forgot to give myself a title. Sounds about right.
I mean, it's pretty normal. There was something in the patron Discord, we were talking about it. If you can, listeners, please put a title. It's a fun practice to do it. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you can just give up and just call something the forest because it has a forest in it. So,
and also, I mean, by putting a title to your piece, it'll help you kind of summarize exactly what it's about and kind of refine what the idea you were going for was just by slapping a title on it.
Sure.
Yep. So, yeah, I think it's a worthy practice, and it definitely makes it easier to talk about your story. So, anyway, so Taylor, whenever you like.
Yeah. All right. So my story is called Excerpt from Zach Cooper, Somewhere in the Back of Rolling Stones.
It's pretty good.
Thank you. It's a mouthful.
I like it, though. Anyway, go ahead.
I met limp death after responding to a flyer in the bathroom of a Denny's. It was 2 a.m. I was piss drunk, recently unemployed from a third strike of tardiness and attitude problems, and completely out of toilet paper. The neon yellow flyer asked for a bassist. I wasn't particularly interested in it in any other way than using it for toilet paper, but they were offering $10 a gig. So I tore off one of the bits that had the number and called it Square. The first one to pick up was Maggie. People will tell you that our relationship turning sour was one of the first nails in the band's coffin, but I had an inkling that she hated me from the get-go. Probably because of this conversation, too. Probably because I was still drunk when it was happening. Well, how long have you played bass? Long enough to be decent at it? Well, just how long is that exactly? Well, I just said, long enough. Maggie had these deep-set brown eyes and piercings scattered everywhere. Her flame-red hair went down to her waist then, but of course you wouldn't be able to picture that. It was our second manager who suggested the buzz cut. He thought Maggie would look edgier with that Sinead O'Connor vibe. We were young enough to still think any of that mattered, so she did it, and it stuck. Limp Death had rehearsals in the basement of a bar on 5th Street around 3 a.m. until dawn. The bar belonged to Jacob's dad, who was more than fine with this arrangement for a small cut of the band's profits. When they first started out, the band wasn't actually making anything, so Jacob ended up working extra shifts as payback to his dad. But, eventually, they started making waves in the local college scene, playing at frat socials, Battle of the Bands, selling their CDs outside the mall until they were shooed away. I remember asking Jacob what happened to their old bassist. Didn't make sense to me that someone would leave when I kept seeing gigs getting more and more packed every weekend. Jacob scoffed and pushed back his shaggy black hair, holding a cigarette in his calloused hand. He became a business major. Fucking sellout. Jacob, with his polished black nails, played lead guitar. Maggie tore up the drums. I stuck to the background with my bass and pretended like anyone in the pit was there to see the three of us. Deep down, we knew Limp Death never took off because of our chemistry or sound. We took off because of Alex. He couldn't play guitar for shit, but he never wrote himself any chord progressions that required a fourth finger anyway. Alex had a voice and a vibe, and people ate it up. He had the slicked back hair, the leather jacket, the typical lost in the wilderness and fine with it attitude. Our producers loved him because of, not in spite of, the massive cliches he assembled for himself. From the outside, Alex was the easiest selling point. That is, except in interviews. Once our first single hit the charts, every radio station wanted an exclusive with Limp Death. I learned quickly that never actually meant all four of us. They wanted to talk to Alex, but wanted us all there for a photo at the end. So Maggie, Jacob, and I all sat in the booth for hours, watching Alex panic. He couldn't talk to people. Never could. The more personal the question, the more he froze up. He stammered. He stuttered. He ended up spending more time practicing Q&As than set lists. The only times Alex could get words out without messing them up was when he was singing and when he was high. I know all of you, no matter how well-intending, make up tragedies for Alex to explain why what happened did happen. I've had people ask about his father, his mother, his brother, who never died in Desert Storm, by the way. Not that any of you actually cared. Don't look offended. I know you didn't write the article, but your magazine published it all the same. Alex didn't become an addict because of a horrific childhood, and our music isn't, how did you guys say it, laced with the hauntings of those memories. Alex became an addict because studio executives provided it for him. They didn't care how many rehabs he went to so long as he sounded good and we kept making music. The band didn't break up because we all fell apart. We fell apart because that's what you wanted us to do. We just got tired of it. The end.
All right.
I really like this.
Fantastic
band
as usual.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, this is a really wonderful story. I love how it does feel like a dramatic like call out in the back of Rolling Stones. Like it does. I think the title actually adds so much to the story.
Yeah, definitely.
Like it feels so right. I didn't even notice that you added it in later. Like it felt like it's part of the story so much. Yeah.
I know when you were reading it, at least from like when I read it to when you were reading it, the kind of point of view that it was being told from switched from me, because I read it, of course, as from the point of view of the bassist, but when you read it, it seemed a lot more kind of like someone asked this bassist a question to kind of spell it out, and it reminded me of a long drawn out interview in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really feels like one of those like letters to the editor like call outs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I so the main theme of the story obviously is how Alex was kind of like, and the whole band was kind of torn up by just like the industry and how the industry works. And I love how you set that up from basically the beginning. When as soon as they where is it? Where it's talking about Maggie and her hair. I'm trying to find it.
Yeah.
Her flame red hair went down to her waist then, but of course you wouldn't be able to picture that, which is it's just a great like connection to the whole world and like implying so much. It was our second manager, so not even the first one, second manager who suggested the buzz cut. He thought Maggie would look edgier with that. How do you say that name? I know it's
I mess it up like every time, but I think it's Sinead O'Connor. She did that cover of Nothing Compares to You, which the reason I made that connection is because it goes deeper into the whole idea of like, that celebrity making machine, because she actually, it was a empowerment thing for her where people kept telling her, well, we can't take you seriously because you're just so beautiful. So she literally buzzed off all of her hair so people would take her seriously. So it's like a additional irony that now they want to use it as something to take away another artist's power.
I didn't know that, but that's an awesome touch. So that last line of that paragraph is you were young enough to still think any of that mattered, so she did it and it stuck. So it doesn't feel like, she went down to her waist, right? So that's like,
that's long.
That's a huge change. That's like got to be like something personal to herself, right? But they forced that change, and then just because it stuck, right?
Yeah.
So you set up that this thing turning out bad from the beginning.
I also liked later on when the main character asked Jacob basically what happened to the old bassist. His only like answer was he became a business major, fucking sellout. But at the same time, they're pretty much selling out.
Yeah, that's true.
So it creates this like very cool sense of irony that I can see being very truthful and probably very real to like some people.
For sure, yeah.
And obviously, you have the implication there that like that's not the whole answer, obviously. Like,
yeah, of course.
There has to be so much more than that. Like, no one's just like, oh, I just need to do business now. Like, obviously, it's at the very least, it's like, oh, this takes up too much of my time, right? Like, or
and also, like, then they apparently didn't have any gigs before they got the, like, new guy.
No, it said that they were getting more and more.
Well, since the new guy came on, yeah?
I got the vibe that it was like they were on the path to getting more and more gigs even before the new bassist.
Yeah, like they were on like the rise. They weren't like super popular, but it was enough for like they could tell.
Okay, I see.
Right. I'm trying to find my next section. Oh, okay. So going back to what I said before, the Arctic Monkeys fanfic.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
The reason I said that is because the lead singer of the Arctic Monkeys, which are pretty good, by the way.
Yeah.
They've got this very unique sound, even though I know they're very popular.
They are the token 2000s band.
Maybe, I don't know. But the lead singer is Alex Turner, and he's definitely like he goes off and does other stuff, right? And the rest of the band doesn't as much. But his whole thing is that he, like you said in the story, he had the slick back hair, the leather jacket, the typical lost in the wilderness and fine with the attitude, which seems very Alex Turner to me. Especially the slick back hair and leather jacket. But obviously, Alex Turner did not commit suicide, has not committed suicide from...
Yeah, no, Alex is cool.
And everything else. Yeah, he's fine.
Wait, he hasn't?
Yeah, no, he hasn't. He's fine.
Oh, dang. I thought he did back in 2005.
There's been a couple albums since then.
I don't think they were popular till, like, 2013, but I mean, you're close.
Hey, it doesn't mean he was alive for that popularity.
Okay.
You have to read
point.
between the lines.
Yeah, so my question then is, what was the inspiration for this piece?
So, so the thinking was, sort of with all of the characters, is that they were in some way connected to or referencing either a different artist or like genre. So Maggie obviously has that connection to Sinead O'Connor, which is like, you know, like 80s, 90s. And then Jacob is sort of that like post-grunge moving into punk era of like the late 90s and early 2000s. So I wanted to do this like continuation of like time and how even though we're progressing more in like musical genres, we're still having this same repeat of turning people out into something else in the industry. So like I think what I just did is I basically described the singer of Arctic Monkeys, because that's like the newest face of like rock essentially, or one of the and I was just like, fuck it, I might as well like go off the shark and just call him that, you know? Just like I thought it would be bordering on like just like, you know, calling it as it is, or like maybe being a little funny with it. But yeah, if I went back, I would definitely try and subvert it a little more, because I feel like it's already kind of clear, and that just was kind of, you know, beating people over the head a little bit. But yeah. That's one of the things I would change for sure.
Okay. So you would just make it into more of your own character, is what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. I think I was like pressed for time, and I was like, nah, we'll just take the easy route.
That's totally valid.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like for like what it is, like it's not a drawback for me, at least when I'm reading it. Like that character, even though it does sound a lot like Alex Turner, I mean,
I think if you just change the name, it would be fine for me. Like,
yeah,
but I mean, like that is just like a look that you see from a lot of frontmen from a very specific point of time that's harkening back to like older times.
Yeah.
But I do like within it, and this is very true with like most bands, is that sadly the everyone else besides the I think lead singer is seen as less important than the lead singer himself, even though it is a band and it's a group thing.
Yeah.
The like lead singer, people see as synonymous to everything that the band does.
Yeah,
because that's basically, you know, the like voice that you're getting the music through.
Yeah, which is interesting though to me, because it's like a voice isn't. I mean, okay, I guess you could say this about all instruments, but like, no offense to any player, but like, is it really down to skill and stuff? Like, I feel like almost every like song could be played by someone else, you know? Like, it could be covered by someone else and achieve pretty similar results. Does that make sense? Like,
are you talking about just like, are you talking about the singer or the rest of the band?
I was gonna say the singer, but I kind of mean all of it, because it's like,
well,
I mean, there's so many extremely talented people that aren't famous, right? Just because they just like they haven't gotten any name recognition, right? But like, you could get someone that sounds exactly like Alex Turner, right? Somewhere off the streets, right? And it wouldn't be Alex Turner himself, right? But it would sound exactly the same.
I think it all comes down to like a collective thing, which is why, like, when it comes to, you know, music specifically in bands, like, you really do need that whole sound. Like, you can tell when a band's, like, for example, like, if you look at the history of like Panic at the Disco or Evanescence, like, you can tell when certain members have like split from those bands because the whole sound changes, especially like when Brendan Urie became the only surviving member of Panic at the Disco. Like, he still goes by Panic at the Disco, but they sound completely different than what they did like 15 years ago because it's just his sound. So I think that's like why I pointed out, like, Alex essentially is the least talented person in that group, but he's also the most important person in that group at the same time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, something that I've gotten from, like, loving metal so much is that when it comes to making a song, it's horribly difficult to, like, mimic with any other group because it's terribly technical in just how they, like, compose these songs. And, even if, like, yeah, you can maybe switch out the lead vocalist for someone else. I know they did that with Static X on their reunion tour, which I'm terribly sad about. But
3 Days Grace as well, yeah.
Excuse me?
3 Days Grace as well, which is rock, but still switched out singers.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's difficult to like mimic, but it can definitely be mimicked. But it's hard to capture that like initial magic that happens when a band goes up there and plays. But of course, like people, like the general audience doesn't think too deeply into it, especially since, you know, music is so readily available that you'll listen to a song and that will go on. And the thing that you will remember is probably the vocals, because people don't really dig terribly deep just in general. So you're going to instantly remember that line that guy said, and not like how crazy it is for the guitarist to come out and like execute that like really awesome riff halfway through. So
yeah.
Sure, yeah. Going back to the writing, so I'm paying attention to those last three paragraphs. The part about Alex's, I really love the line, "I know all of you, no matter how well intending, make up tragedies for Alex to explain what happened did happen." Like, I love that so much, the making up tragedies, making up conspiracies, and making up, like, instead of just making it simpler, right, of just... Well, I really like also the touch of the outside that you have in it. With I've had people ask about his father, his mother, his brother, who never died in Desert Storm, by the way. It adds so much about it. Like, obviously, there's a whole controversy in this world about Alex, and not that any of you actually cared, which is like. I mean, like, why do people who write it care, right? Like, I mean, in real life, I'm sure there are, like, some people who are very passionate, but, you know, many of them are just, like, they need to write something, and they're interested, but they're not, like, emotionally connected to it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
and I don't know. I find that a very interesting take.
For sure.
And I love when the character calls out in the next paragraph, Alex didn't become an addict because of a horrific childhood, and our music isn't. And then you have the pause. How did you guys say it? Laced with the hauntings of those memories, which is great because like it's a nice meta touch because like this whole letter is kind of that thing, right?
Exactly.
It's the explanation for it, and it's like, I mean, it's a dramatic take, right? Just the same way that laced with the hauntings of those memories is also a dramatic take. So it's interesting.
Well, thank you.
And then the ending is wonderful too. The band didn't break up because we all fell apart. We fell apart because that's what you wanted us to do. We just got tired of it. Which totally makes sense. Like drama is obviously so much more interesting than not drama, right?
Yeah.
And conflict is what drives stories, and stories are what drives results and ratings and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure this season of The Bachelorette has a lot more attention now because it's got an evil villain.
And it
right?
definitely did.
Literally never watched a season of my life, but you know I tuned in every Tuesday to see Luke P was going to do.
Jesus Christ. What an animal.
What an animal. I don't watch The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, but I do listen to Without a View, and they give quite a good rundown of what happens every week. It's pretty fun. Yeah, I don't want to watch it, but I'm okay with listening to recaps. But anyway, the story is I really love the story. I think it's like one of the it's a really awesome take on this topic, and it's not something that I expected to see.
So like stepping back, right? This is I'm gonna assume is the second time you've done the right thing, yeah?
Yeah.
So how was this time different from the previous time? Like, did you have like a lot more confidence going into it, or was there still a very similar amount of stress with the deadline?
I actually had a lot more fun this go round. I think I kind of, got rid of the pretense of I need to write something and it needs to be the best thing I've ever written in my life, and just focused more on this is the vibe and the voice I kind of want to do. This is the one that's like inspiring me right now the most. So even if I hit a wall, I'm just gonna keep going, and I'll write down something, even if in hindsight it's ridiculous, like just outright just putting Alex Turner in it. Like, why not? Who cares?
Yeah.
So it was more enjoyable this go round for me because I think I just kind of let loose and just did it. I did the right thing.
That's right.
Well, honestly, it's sweet to see that you actually had fun.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely like going off the first time. It's if you have a deadline, it's not always terribly fun. But I'm glad to see that you brought us something that we both honestly really love, and also that you enjoyed doing the right thing. That's kind of what we're here to do.
Yeah, and on putting Alex Turner in there and stuff like that, like it's totally valid. I mean, this is the first draft, right? A first draft in 30 minutes. So like, the assumption to me is that if you were ever actually to do anything serious with this, and I'm talking to listeners here too, like you will go back and rewrite the whole thing, right? You're gonna go back and fix whatever you need.
We can
right?
do
So
that?
if you're writing yeah, you can. But so like if you're writing a fantasy story, right, it's totally valid to just like put in an elf, right? And then if you want to later, you can make it something different, right?
Exactly. I mean, like honestly, you could like go back and you could turn up the like Alex Turnery to 1,000.
Oh,
kind of like spoof it out.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's a good lesson for this challenge. So if you were to rewrite it, what would you go back and change?
Well, besides some of the stuff I've already mentioned, I did originally have like a different sort of ending. Like eventually it was gonna have that conclusion. So I think that last section would be there regardless. But I intended for there to be a scene between the bassist and Alex, because at first I had this whole different idea, but regardless, I wanted there to be a scene where Alex essentially like asks the question that sort of gets answered towards the end, like, you know, why do they even need me to talk? Why can't the music be enough? You know? And it was going to be that whole conversation, and he was going to have this, you know, huge tragedy at his core, but then I realized, like, no, like, that is the question that my character is asking is the answer to the writer. Like, he doesn't have to have a tragedy. Like, his music can be enough, sort of thing. But I would probably add something along those lines of him outright being, why does any of this shit matter? Like, why can't we just perform and that's good for them?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the kind of theme here is that they were like rewarded over and over for having these unhealthy decisions, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I love that line. Alex became an addict because studio executives provided it for him, right? They didn't care how many rehabs he went to, as long as he kept sounding good and we kept making music. I almost think that, like, they did care how many rehabs he went to, but, like, they were like, it was like a pleasant surprise almost, like, because then he's in the tabloids again, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Any publicity is good publicity. Blah, blah, blah. Yep.
Well, let's transition into the last sections of the podcast. But yeah, so at the end of this podcast, we're going to we're going to announce the words for next week. So please stay tuned.
Yes.
But right now we're going to talk about listener stories. So listeners, you guys can submit stories by going to reddit.com/r/do the right thing. So we've started to receive a lot of stories.
Many. Like, I think, like, literally this week we got 17 stories, including our own. So that means 14 is by you people that listen. And and they're all so good. They all make me embarrassed to be amongst this group of fantastic writers. And there is a beautiful amount of back and forth coming from a person to, like, person. And I don't know. It's the absolute dream when it comes to, like, making a podcast like this, getting so much participation, not even 20 episodes in.
Yeah, and, like, I especially love the comments back and forth because, and we're gonna talk about this more in a second, but you know, giving good comments to every single one as two hosts, right? When there's 14 stories, and not including our own, is really difficult. So if neither Jarvis or I talked about yours or commented on your story, we're sorry. But yeah, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of time because we want to give some good attention, which is why we have to announce a change to how we're going to do this section. So. Yeah. Today, for this episode, we're going to read every single story. We're always going to read every single story, but we're going to talk about every single story on this one. But starting by the next one, we are going to instead only talk about 5, 4 of which will be randomly selected to make sure everyone has a fair chance at getting talked about. So I'm going to explain our method once, and then I'll write it down on a Reddit post and have a link to it on every word post, so you guys can reread this if you like, because this is a little complicated, but it's made just to be as fair as possible. So the method going forward after this time is going to be we're going to choose one story, right, to spotlight, the one that we want to make sure that we talk about.
Yeah.
And then the other 4 are going to be selected randomly from everyone who submits that week. Yeah. Every time you submit, you're going to be added to a list of you're going to enter it into a drawing, basically. And so every single week that you write a story, you get another entry. And every time, and when you get drawn and your story gets talked about, all of your entries are wiped and you're back to 0. So this basically means that the more you write, the more chance you're going to get to get talked about. And the less of a chance that we get like too many repeats in a row from the same people.
Exactly. And I mean, like, for the one that we do choose as a group to like talk about, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best one of that week. We're not in the business of really ranking these stories because, of course, you've written it within 30 minutes. And also, as we all know, it's subjective. There really isn't a best. But the one that we do pick basically means that we have something that we each specifically want to say about it, and it'll probably garner a lot more discussion, or at least on a topic that we want to go, and that's the reason why we're picking it, not to kind of like put any ranks to anything. We just want to make sure that is apparent and said.
Like we just want to be able to talk about them, and we're not going to choose the same person for that thing 2 weeks in a row, but it's definitely possible that they show up again out of random drawings, although it's pretty low considering how odds work. But I just this is going to let us like make sure that we can talk in depth about stories, because with 14 stories to talk about and maybe more in the future, it's kind of hard to give more than just a summary.
Because pretty much I know what we did last episode is that we had 10. We would just summarize, we would say one thing, and then we would go. But this way we would actually be able to discuss. It will be a little bit more snappy. So for those who didn't submit that week, they're not going to be entirely boarded by that section. And also, we will provide actual feedback to the people that are chosen, and so that we can not only talk about it but also give them nuggets from our point of view that can possibly help them later on down the line to do the right thing and also write in general.
Yeah, and this will also make it a lot easier for guests who, instead of having to read all 14 stories,
they only have to read
5, right? We're still going to try to read all of them. At some point, we're not going to be able to do that, but I think for a good time, we can still read all of them to make sure that we're being fair in selecting that one story and giving feedback in the comments. One other thing, so the choosing the 4... 2 of those will be from everyone, and 2 will be from patron-only submitters. So if you donate even at the $1 level, you'll be able to do that. For now, I think we're just to set up, you can DM me on Discord, which you can DM me on Discord if you are in the Doof Media Discord. Your username, and we'll make sure to get 2 Doof Media patron submissions, and then 2 from everyone else. It's just a way to make sure that everyone gets a chance. All that said,
let's go ahead and just roll.
Let's go ahead and go into the stories. That whole explanation is going to be written on a post, and you'll be able to read through that. In the future, I'm just going to say you get entered into a drawing just to cut down on time. But anyway. So going through the stories, I think we'll just go from newest to oldest.
So the newest one that is not our lovely guests is from a Stuck in Reddit factory. And this one I really, really liked. Later on in the comments, they said that they were trying to make a very assholey character, and I definitely got that. But at the same time, maybe it's just me and me liking characters that are imperfect, but I kind of had a affinity for this character, and I liked the back and forth, and the whole reason as to why they are out in the snowy woods with 3 full bottles of tequila.
So for the summary, this character goes out, and this is a full spoilers discussion for all of these stories, so please go stop this recording and go ahead and go and read some, because there's some really awesome ones. But this story by Stuck in Reddit Factory has also an Alex, by the way, which is funny, going in the forest to get their own organ for their insurance company, because the insurance company costs so much.
Which, when I read it, I'm assuming they were hunting people.
Yeah.
Which is
it wasn't
a fantastic.
It was intentionally hidden. I suspected because they didn't describe the animal whatsoever.
Exactly, but I mean, it was a really great twist at the end, and also that those very last couple of lines provided a like really good punchline that even though they got their own organ, it's only 3% off of the total cost, which I thought was very funny.
That's good. The next one is by Grady Bowers, who said that their inspiration was from Dungeons and Dragons.
That is my buddy Grady. Yeah, what's up?
Oh, that's your friend.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
I used to DM I thought was pretty sporadic D&D sesh, but they seem to love it. But yeah.
So this story is about a fantasy character going down into the Underdark and wondering if they'll escape and describing the whole thing. And it's short, but I think it has a lot in it.
Yeah, and he's talking about how he's facing against these creatures that they thought was only within fairy tales, which definitely
it's funny.
Yeah,
it's a fantasy story.
Exactly, and it provides a lot more of an into whatever world this is, to where all of these fantasy things that we see as synonymous with like stuff like D&D is foreign to this character. So that provides a really decent line there that I like.
The next one by Kelaniro 985, titled Experimental, has a person who's been bitten by a zombie being forcefully tested. Having a cure tested on them, and it's a very like tense because the character knows that they're going to die
within hours.
One way or another. Within a day, and I love how like death being a reminder to them is like worse than not being reminded of it. Like they forget about it and then they remember. And it's a very like tense and dramatic story. Some of the other testees are like, one of them freaks out and wants to escape, and they're offered the choice between like just dying outside and getting murdered or having the cure put into them, which hurts. And some of them take it, which I thought was surprising because I thought it would be like, oh no, but they do take it.
I mean, it's better than just zombifying yourself. But I do have a question that will probably cut. But is there a text limit for posts on Reddit?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they hit the text limit and they had to split into 2 pages, which I've had to do before actually.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I'm novice when it comes to using Reddit, but I was wondering if it was a like stylistic choice
to like chapter 2
to a split up. I was like, oh damn, they're like really trying to mess with our brains on this one. But at like any rate, it was a really awesome story, and I loved reading it. And at least for me, I have a very short attention span to like certain things, only because I like going on to the next one. I shouldn't snap. I know, but it provided comedy. But with this story, I was in it for the entire ride, even when it spanned over a second post. So yeah, I really liked this one.
Mm-hmm. So the next one is by Asgar Zigel. If you want us to pronounce your username correctly, just put at the beginning.
And it's titled No Retreat.
Yeah, with a trigger warning for body horror and body control horror and war,
which those are my 3 favorite things.
I think adding trigger warnings is a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, if you do feel that your material is specifically triggering.
Well, they put it in spoiler text, so it's like if you really do need to know if there's a trigger warning for your thing, you can see it, but otherwise you don't get spoiled, which I thought was cool.
Okay, hold on. Slight tangent. How many different like sites and like software does that spoil text thing work on?
Oh, well, the Reddit one is different from the one on Discord.
Oh, okay.
It's a different kind of like method, I think.
Well then.
But all the good ones do, because spoiler text is very important.
Yeah. All the forums.
Yeah. So this story is about a soldier in a like mech suit, basically in an exoskeleton, getting hit by a bomb, right? And so it has a medical report, right?
Yeah.
What I really like about it is that every single one of the injuries is described as light, even though they're really horrible. So it's light kinetic trauma caused by explosion shockwave, light internal bleeding, really, light external injuries, light concussion, limiting audiovisual and balanced senses, administering first aid, which I thought was so great, right?
Yeah.
It really shows how like kind of detached this medical thing is. But then the group has to retreat, or someone tries to retreat, and the character starts to retreat, but the system doesn't allow this, and it overrides their control of their own exoskeleton, activating Revenant Protocol, which is an awesome name, and changes their status to deceased, right? So they get to be treated as if they're already dead, and basically like the exoskeleton turns them into just like a robot, and all of the other dead bodies do the same thing, which is like doubles the horror, because it's like not only are you being controlled, but you're treated as a dead body, right?
As you're like inside of this mech that's just barreling towards the enemy.
Yeah, and they described how they ran out of 30 minutes, which might be a good thing, because they were going to describe the horror of burning alive, because they're heading into fire. I don't know. I feel like it ends at a good spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought the idea was brilliant. I've never seen that before. So going to the next one by
Sarah Penguin.
Sarah Penguin, who writes
name.
Dancing Dream. Jarvis, I feel like you had a lot to say about the story.
Oh yes, Dancing Dream. I really, really liked it. Mostly because I just like the stories that are kind of rooted in like post tragedy type deal, to where like a character is trying their best not to wallow in this sadness, and in turn uses maybe a aspect of that sadness to kind of like get them out of it. Because within this, basically it's this woman going to this log cabin that her and her husband used to like go to every 2 weeks out of the year, but it isn't explicitly said, but the husband is no longer there for whatever reason. But when they were there, they would always dance with each other. So when this woman goes there by herself, she just dances to like no music by herself, to kind of feel that connection, that intimacy that she felt with her, I guess, boyfriend, husband, that is no longer there. And specifically, I like one of the last lines where, if I can find it. Okay. As the flames died down completely and her feet ached, she stopped dancing, but her eyes remained shut for another minute or two. When they were opened, she was alone in the cold cabin again, to kind of just symbolize how she's grasping on to these like fleeting memories and emotions that she has when she's dancing, but also has when she's dancing with the person that she loved. So I just really liked it, and I really liked what it was going for a whole lot. Yeah.
They also say that their story is partly inspired by Caitlin's story, which I think is really awesome. I'm really glad.
Yeah.
Caitlin was the guest last week, but I'm really glad that would happen. I didn't expect that to happen with any of our stories. Like, I mean, in general, not like in the specific last week.
Yes, only.
But anyway,
only draw from last week's stories, nothing else.
Yes, please. Yeah. So the next one, the next one's by MyZ1, which is Elliot from Deep Impact and Media MD. For the record.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna call out all of them. I think everyone but Scott wrote. So it's funny. Scott better get on this.
Term.
So this one's called Term, and it's about. I like how it reveals as you go through that the character has just won the presidency without ever saying the presidency.
Oh, yeah.
You just realize it when they're in an Oval Office, but it's not like it's labeled Oval Office. It's just described, right? It's an ovular room, right?
Yeah.
and it's called out just because of like how off it feels because the echo is wrong, which I really like. And they're at an important desk, right? And so they've won, right? But then someone comes in and gives them a news article that shows that something terrible from their past has come back
to haunt them. Yeah. To basically like, and it's the exact opposite that his platform was kind of running. Against which basically jeopardizes his entire presidency.
Right. So it describes it that they basically go hollow. Like they when they first sit down at the desk, they feel butterflies, but after that, the butterflies are dead. Right.
Yeah. Dead.
Not even asleep. They're dead. And how they're completely alone after all of that. So I thought it was like really nice and dramatic. And he says that like he doesn't write political stuff, but like I think this works really well. This feels more like drama than political to me.
Because like even though the setting itself is within politics, the drama is kind of beyond that, to where it's more so just this internal conflict of like what you are versus what you're saying, and how like those things can blow up one day if you don't get it right. So the next one is by Zorglord, which is actually Ruben from Deep Impact and Media MD. It's love
interesting
that
how they
name.
wrote so close to each other. Yeah, it's a fun thing.
Zorglord.
So this story is titled 14%, which I think they went back and added that in.
They did, yeah.
Which is cool. Hold on.
And
sorry, I was just. Never mind. I was just checking to make sure that it was Ruben and Elliot, and not Elliot and Ruben.
Not so randos. No.
If that is wrong, please correct me, guys. I don't think it is. I think I'm correct.
Yeah.
Because Elliot's been writing like 1 week more or something.
But
like that.
This story is from the perspective of a field medic, and I don't know. I just really like it because basically, it has this like dire sense to where the medic knows that most of the people they lose,
that they help, that die, and it's like it's a bad track record too.
Yeah,
like it's even worse than normal.
Only 34% of them survive, and then later on, there's this really cool addition of this person that's basically death that like comes in and like lurks over their shoulder, waiting for them to just give up so that death can just take them.
And they use like the attention of death as like a sign of like, are they done or not? Like
exactly,
they think that they're done, but death is getting closer, so they go back and they find another bullet in the body, basically.
Yeah. And then at the very end, what I like really liked is that there was a huge explosion outside, and then Death just booked it out there.
Well, he walks out, but yes.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
towards the explosion,
just straight up,
which I think
goes.
is probably tied to the 14% amount, because I think they went back and added that in, or he went back and added that in. So I think that's from the death of all those people outside. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure where the 14% fits into the title of the story, but I mean, he's working with percentages, so I can see like a link there. But like, either way, it's a fantastic piece.
I think the 14%, since it was added in later, I think if it's something that like if we read it and with that title and then went through it, I think we would have had it in our mind and we would have fit it in to a slot.
Okay.
But because we're like just going back and like having to search through our memory to see how it fits, it's harder.
Yeah.
But anyway, so going on to the next one by Generous Nat, which is a fun name. And it's basically this character, Amelia, is running through the forest away from fire and a bunch of other horrible stuff. Yeah. They were basically dropped into a Hunger Games situation, which is it's very tense the whole time. And they have a flashback halfway through, but it doesn't like lose any pacing, because like the flashback is just as tense as the current reality. Basically the whole thing is just for like getting data for VR stuff, which is like, it's a comedic kind of like touch at the ending, but it's also said in a very serious way. So it's interesting. It's a nice cross tone twist ending.
Definitely. The next one is by Kyrgyzstan, and it's called Rain to Hell.
No, To Rain in Hell.
I can't read. Okay.
So this story is about, so a person dies and they go to hell, but hell filled up a few hundred years ago, and then all the demons left because they were like, oh, we've worked enough, we'll be fine for the next while. But then exponential growth, and hell overflowed, the humans took over, and the streets of new Pandemonium, which is the capital of hell in Dante's Inferno, I'm pretty sure. Like has basically given people clothing and housing. It basically is just like humans took over hell and made it better, even though people are really bad in hell because it's assholes, people who go to hell, right?
But they're so bad that they're good.
Yeah. So I thought it was funny, like the last line is what the fuck just happened after all of that, which is really funny. So I actually really enjoyed this ride. It's not that they were disappointed, but I thought it was a lot of fun. I read just quick tangent. I read the Salvation War, which is an online, basically a web serial more or less, about heaven is closed and God announces it to the world, and the legions of hell are supposed to go up and take over. But then humanity has certainly gained a lot more in technology since the time since biblical times. So basically, we counter invade and invade hell with tanks and stuff like that. It's a pretty awesome read.
That sounds
it's
awesome,
pretty fun.
dude.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I would recommend it.
Think about just like rolling into hell in a tank with your buddies, about to just like stick it to the devil.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what happens, and it's a super fun ride. I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
It's definitely heavy on like the military porn. It's basically like Warhammer 40k except a positive outlook.
Ooh.
Because we're defeating hell. Like that's spoilers a little bit, but also it's like completely expected. So
wait, what's
like that's the whole point?
What's a spoiler?
That we're defeating hell, that we're beating it.
Okay. we finally beat hell.
Well, that's the premise anyway. Yeah. I mean, there's back. Anyway, I didn't mean to go on that far about it. Oh. So the next story is by Kausubalu V2. And the title of the story is Mortuary.
Set in the world of a shard of sorcery.
Yes, which I don't know what that is, but that sounds wonderful. Yeah. And the story stands on its own without knowing what that is. Yeah. Because I liked it. So basically, the character is a what's it called? Someone that is a mortuary person.
Mortician.
Runs the morgue. Mortician. Or maybe they're not a mortician. Maybe they're just a doctor. I don't know.
I mean, if they work in a morgue, they're a mortician.
Yeah, but they work in a medical building that has like a lot of like fantasy stuff going on. Like there's an elemental that doesn't like Gary whatsoever. But they go to the morgue and they raise a body from the dead, basically. And it's like not but the thing is, it's not like that bad of a thing. Yeah. It's definitely going to be frowned upon, and maybe it's illegal, but it's also like they're not going to be eating brains, right? So, but anyway, I thought the character's perspective was very interesting, and the touches of the world building were really good.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, so I like it. I like that one a lot.
Next one is okay, say it. I don't know.
Mordinamail, which is Matt Freeman from the Doof cast, and we've got Worm, and we've got Ward, and so-called writers, and
it's a Doof.
Yeah, it's one of the OG Doofs. So this story is called Tone, and it's amazing. It's really amazing. If you haven't read that story, please, if you're gonna pause for any of them, pause right now and then go read it. Mordinamail's story Tone on Death, Wilderness, Flame, Medical, because it's a really beautiful story and it's like really fun too. Yeah. So this story is we have this interesting perspective from a guitar shop employee, and he's like very jaded, and he starts off like very technical, and then a guy comes in and there's like sort of like a magical realism kind of thing going on where like he looks like death, but he's not actually. He's some guitarist.
Looks like death.
Or is he?
Right.
He kind of looks like
Yeah. And as the text goes on, the text gets more dramatic, where like the other employee staggers towards the customer, and then the character says something in his gait, in the posture of his arms, and line of his neck makes it click for me. He looks like a bit character in a Renaissance painting, suffused with the glow reflected holy light. Like, that's the first touch. And then the guy that looks like death, Reinhard Koppel, starts like very casually testing out his guitar in the amps, right? And it's described like so like fluidly, and so casually, right? But as they find one of the amps, right, Koppel plays a chord, and it's like the most beautiful thing ever, right? And it's just one chord. It's just a perfect chord, apparently. And then the second one like makes it more dramatic. So just to cut some stuff out. At first he creates one tone, solid, simple. It thrums in the air, substantial. It is merely a chord, merely a pattern of overlapping frequencies, but it is also my grandmother's house in the fall, after the leaves had fallen, but before the first hard freeze. The next chord creates structure, speaks of wilderness, speaks of a dying flame on a moonless night. I think I hear, but no, there are no wolves left to howl. It is only the wind. The third set of notes is a variation on the first, rebirth, a second chance if I... It stops. Koppel tugs the cable out. The amp makes a sound like a dying bison. This one, he says. It's just... Okay, I meant to stop at some point in there, but then I couldn't. It's so... I love it so much.
Yeah.
And it's like comedic too, just because like this beautiful thing is just from a couple tones. It's clearly over dramatic, but it's like so casually treated by the player. I don't know. I loved reading this story. So Matt, thanks for writing in this week.
It's strong. I can feel its strength from here.
What he manages to do, which is completely just astounding to me, and not to play off the title, but he's managing to balance like several tones at once. At one point the story has this weird, beautiful surrealism to it, and then it's highly unsettling at the same time. Like, I felt kind of threatened by this guy's presence, but intrigued at the same time, and that's like, those are two so like starkly different feelings, and he's pulling them off as if they are one at the same time, and that's incredibly impressive.
Yeah. Honestly, like I want to do a whole section on that story, but we'll move on for other stories. The next is by Slifferjam. I really love the story because it reminds me of something that I was trying to do in one of my world building. Like I wrote a story with a similar magic system. So basically, this is like a pyromancer that's a novice pyromancer trying to learn magic, and so they're trying to picture these words in their head that makes the magic spell work. The words like appear in their mind, and they're never the right words, but they always seem to be close. And it's really interesting. Like they go through, and each one is like 3 in parentheses too, so it's like set apart from the rest of the text. But they're like 3 Latin-ish words that are like similar, right? Yeah. So we have Vernus,
like solidus,
smoldus,
smoldus, flamus,
and then flora, fiera, fiara, fervis, floris, and then one is like just like ambliz, scorchin, question mark.
Yeah.
And so they go through and they're trying all these magic things, and we have like a lot of touches of how they've been practicing over time. And it's like set in the modern world, right? So it's like my first aid kit held fresh bandages in a tube of over-the-counter burn cream that I picked up at the drugstore a week ago. It was nearly empty, $9.99 a tube. Just as funny. And so like they go through all this build up, right? And there's like a ton of repetition at the end as they like get ready to do the spell, right? And so we go from like I stood in front of the campfire and blaze and scorch and flame. I delicately unwrapped the bandages from my hands, and blaze and scorch and flame. I began to feel the flame on my skin, and blaze and scorch and flame. I drew in a breath of the cool night air, and blaze and scorch and flame. A few small embers trickled off my fingertips. Wrong words. Clearly wrong. Like, it's so much build up, and then they immediately get some new words, and they go back and go to take some notes. So I don't know. I love the way that this builds up and subverts that expectation.
Definitely, and I do just love the like ending, how it's a like subtle joke, how he's putting so much time into it, and he only gets like a couple of trickles, but then you go deeper into the character to where that doesn't discourage them. It encourages them to keep on going. So yeah.
So the last thing I want to say about it is with that last repetition thing. So each one of the preceding ones is in the parentheses, just like it has been in the paragraphs before. But the very last one is when they speak it out loud, right? So we get from the parentheses to quotation marks, and it like really like makes a difference when you're looking at it. And it makes it more real. It makes it more grounded into the scene, and I thought that was very interesting.
And then the next one right after that boy is
Corona Palentia.
Yes, that is true.
Which is a reference to Worm, by the way.
That's why I don't
The
get
Corona Palentia is the part in Worm where like the connection in your brain to your power is.
Spoilers.
I mean, it's not really. It's just a world building touch.
Speaking of, and a slight tangent, I made it halfway through Arc 2.
Oh, really? That's fast, considering like 2 days ago you said you were going to start over.
Yeah, I did.
That's wow. Well, good job.
And I remembered like after the like very last arc or the very last chapter of like Arc 1, why I like it so much. Like, I don't know. I straight up just got right back in. And hopefully I can go farther because I want to see where these characters go. I want to see more of Arms Master. Only because Oh,
you actually said it this time.
Yeah, because
for the longest time you were saying weird stuff.
Because it's a really good gag. Okay. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it because I don't know, just by actually physically reading it, I could picture everything a lot more than when I was doing the audiobook, so that's definitely something. But
okay,
back to the podcast.
So Corona Palentia,
this story was fantastic. I absolutely liked it. And in the beginning, I wasn't totally sure where it was going, but where it went, I was so comfortable and just happy with.
So what it is it's a perspective of death. So someone is like in the ground, right? I love this beginning. I'm gonna read it out. When does death come? You get different answers if you ask different people. Ancient priests might say that it is the moment when the soul leaves the body. A poet might call it the snuffing of the flame. A medical professional could mark the moment by the failure of brain activity, the starting end heartbeats. The answer I find as the barrow worms crawl across me is not yet.
Yeah.
Which is so, that's so great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and
this is another story that please go.
Like, I mean, after you read that, I know for me, I was thinking of just like a variety of like different things going on within my life. But after I like read that section, I was dialed in. And I wanted to see exactly where this was gonna take me.
Yeah. So basically, it's a perspective of death, of that, like even after death in this world, anyway. People don't die, and it starts off in other commenters and the writer said the same. That it starts off kind of like it's horror, but then it goes into magical realism, and I think like it's pretty close to magical realism even from the beginning.
Yeah, and also like I don't really see like a change like that. I like because even though it does kind of change genres halfway through, I feel that's the entire purpose. Because
like it goes from this thing being horrible to it being beautiful.
Yeah, because you like end up being like ew, and then you say aw because of the arc that takes you on.
That's the take of the story. Like they're like being they're decomposing, right? But as their flesh kind of like spreads out in the world, they still exist in those parts, right? So like a beetle eats the body a little bit, but like they are part of the beetle, right? They're part of the larva. So I thought that was really beautiful. And then they talk to the groundskeeper, who's like a friend of them in real life, and he's not like that freaked out. He's just like, oh, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, he's like, oh, we'll come in. It's raining outside.
So like, I would say that honestly, my only question, which is saying that I want more, but I would like to figure out if this is a one-time occurrence or if this is a very common thing, because like groundskeeper reacted very naturally to it and like instantly coming up with a his own explanation of it. So I don't know, that's just something I was wondering.
I feel it's something that like maybe like a hint would help, but honestly I like it as is.
Like not within this story. Like, I mean, I feel that the story itself is tight and it's pretty spot on, but I feel that, you know, I would just want to know.
Oh, you personally would want to know.
Just like it's like outside of the story, because like answer like that doesn't really need to find its way in the story, because that's not the story the story's trying to tell.
Well, to finish the summary, they talk to the groundskeeper and they talk like old friends, and they go to another graveyard where the main characters old lover, which they were both women, and the lover was like married to a man, but like now they can be together for real, which I thought was really beautiful.
For realsies.
Yeah, so in the ending line is beautiful because they describe how they seep down into the soil, into the grave, and kind of become together. They lie together. I feel myself mingling with her, feel a deep joy as we lie down together, and the rain makes us a muddy bed. Together we go out and become the wilderness, flames mingling together, which is beautiful. Becoming the wilderness, I love that, like becoming part of the world. It's really well done. So thank you, Corona Palencia. The
final one.
The last story. Yes, the last story. Last but certainly not least.
J-Maniac.
J-Maniac, yes. This is another story that I absolutely love. Yeah. I know I'm talking a lot here. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
I'm just trying to fit like as many into my word count as possible in the story. My WPM, my words per minute, real fast, because I want to say a lot, but I know that we don't have that much time. So this story is someone wakes up in a carriage and they're being taken to the church because they're sick, right? But the character like hates every part of their savior, right? So they say like, oh, thank the angels. The word angels drilled the pain into the center of my skull. Yeah. And they like we realize fairly quickly that like, oh, they must like hate the church. They must hate angels, right? For different reasons. Maybe they're a vampire, right? That's a conclusion that I got.
Yeah, same. When I was reading it, I can tell that it was within this like fantasy world because of certain keys, but they did have a kind of like, I wouldn't say weakness, but you know, it was definitely something like how a vampire would react to it, or some sort of creature that is not necessarily aligned on the same side that a cleric would be.
Yeah, and what I find really interesting is how they kind of subvert this with like, it's not actually a vampire, it's a fae creature, a creature of
the wilderness,
the fairy and the forest and stuff like that, which it's so like the church and the holiness is definitely part of it, but they also describe like how like horrible and disgusting just the city itself is, and how it makes them sick, and like they hate the city, they hate the bricks, they hate everything around it, and they're getting all sick from it. So I thought it was like really fascinating that they subvert this trope, which like historically kind of makes sense. In Pact, by the way, I mentioned this in the comment. Pact, one of the other stories by Wild Bow, which is being covered by Deep Impact. It's really good, by the way. I put it off for too long. It's kind of similar where vampires are just like fairy who just like convinced themselves that they were vampires. But it's interesting because fae creatures were like such a part of lore for a long time, and they've kind of dropped out in the modern culture. But so I thought the story was like really like the world building was really interesting and very, very subtle. And and this is just really cool scene and set up to this character in this world where they are half fairy or half fae at the very least, in this world where like holiness and the city are like the bad side, or at least the side of the humans, and opposed to the fae. So
yeah. So honestly, thank you so much to everyone that submitted. Like, it's crazy to think that we got this many and that they're all great. And we honestly wish that we can talk so much more about each one of them. But this is going to be a long episode, just like last one.
Yeah, this episode's going to be so
This one's going to be
long.
extra long. We're almost 3 hours, dude.
Yeah, and we're probably not going to be able to cut more than like 20. We just passed the 3 hour mark on our recording. So yeah, starting next week, and I'm going to announce this on the subreddit and our Twitter and the Discord and on everything as soon as we're done recording. But starting next week, we're only going to read 5 stories a week, but it's in a fair system, as fair as I could make it, to make sure that the more that you write, the more likely you are to be mentioned.
Exactly. So please keep on writing in, and your story will definitely be picked eventually, because we want to definitely lessen the amount of time that we spend in this section, just to kind of tighten up the entire podcast in general. But we want to continue to shout out the people that do write in, because without you, then there'd be no purpose in doing any of this. So we found a nice middle ground to do both.
If we had to, if we said all the stories, right, I can imagine a point, it seems fairly soon, where we would get like 20 stories and would have to just like do like 10 seconds on everyone. And that just, I don't want to just, I mean, maybe what we'll do is we'll still shout out usernames just to, because we want you to know that we are reading your stories, and we encourage you to do the right thing. It's just that there's a limitation to how much we can dive into on each episode.
Because I mean, like, if we were to like keep on doing it to where we hit every single last one, and we kept getting more and more, as you said, like, we will only be able to spend about 10 seconds on each, and that's a disservice to you and how much work you put into your pieces. So this way we will be able to actually have some pretty good discussions, be able to pound out some really great topics, and make sure everyone has a fantastic writing day.
Yeah. So we're going to do our outro now, and at the very end, we're going to say next week's words. So if you want to write along with us, like everyone that has this week, and again, thank you so much, you can go to reddit.com/r/do the right thing, and you can go to the most recent post, which will have the words, and post your story in the comments. You just have to sit down, set a timer for 30 minutes, and you can write on whatever you like, and include at least 3 of this week's words.
You can also see the new words when they come out every Sunday by following @RightThingCast on Twitter, or going to our subreddit, which we have shout out numerous times, but it is
if you want to
r/do the right thing.
If you want to send your story, if you don't want to post it online, or you don't have a Reddit account, you want us to post it for you, you can send us an email at rightthingcast@gmail.com. Or if you have a question or anything like that, you can absolutely send it there too.
Okay. So now let us reveal the beautiful words of next week.
We gotta plug Doof. We gotta doof it up.
I thought we would. Okay. Cool.
So if you want to up your chances of having your story chosen, or at the very least, support us and make sure that we can continue making the content, and everyone else on the Doof Media can make their content, you can $1 a month or whatever else you can afford at the Doof Media Patreon, which I think is like patreon.com/Doof Media.
Exactly. And by putting forth money to them, you can ensure that our podcast and any of the other Doof podcasts that you have seen, or the ones that we have mentioned, can continue to keep on coming out with episodes, along with also upping the the quality episode from episode, just to make it easier for you to listen, or just give you a better listening experience overall. Basically, by helping them out, you are helping us out, so we can help you out.
Yep. So this week on the DTWT, I want to plug 3 things real quick. So Media MD did an episode on the Flintstones comic, which is apparently like a very
it's
a really well done political satire, which I did not expect from the Flintstones. It says on it, Hollywood Reporter says one of the sharpest social satires around in and out of comics, which is, it was just very interesting to hear them talk about it. So that's on Media MD. DTWT did an episode on Code Geass, the Lelouch of the Rebellion, which I was really looking forward to.
And it's a fire show if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. And they had a mixed review. And then Deep Impact, there is still time to catch up if you go and binge all of Pact immediately and then listen to as much Deep Impact as you want, as you can. Right now they're heading into kind of like a crazy section of the story, so I would really recommend that.
And how would I know a single thing about it? Because I'm still reading Worm.
That's totally okay.
Yes. But no.
So with that, let's announce next week's words.
Well, okay. Should we announce the words, or should we let our lovely guest do
Taylor,
a plug?
Taylor, please. I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
I just have my Instagram. That's about it. I don't really have anything to plug.
Well, go ahead and plug it.
Okay.
If you want random people from the internet to follow.
Sure. If any of you random people from the internet want to follow me, I have an Instagram, Taylor Lea Hoyt. You can find me there. It'll be LEAHOYT. Send me a message. Let me know you heard me from Do the Right Thing, and follow for follow. It'll be good.
All right, on. So now to roll into next week's words, which I think are going to be really good ones. And they are damage, rule, sparkling, and tiger.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Damaged, rule, sparkling, and tiger. I can see a...
Oh, okay. Not rural.
Rural.
Like a rural town.
Yeah. I mean, can't you say it both ways?
Well, this is an audio medium, and it sounded like you were saying like rural, as in like
True.
Rule the world.
Rural. I'm sorry. It's my southern accent coming out.
Yeah, rural is a rural way of saying rural. Yes.
And honestly, I can see some fantastic stories about like a sparkling tiger spirit that like burns down a entire rural town and causes real damage to the economic system.
Okay. I lived in a damaged house, a damaged barn in the rural area, but my eyes sparkle when I think of getting a pet tiger. Taylor?
That's pretty good.
You got something?
I'll get back to you on that. I'll do my mental mapping.
Mental map.
Okay, get back to us next week.
Yes.
Please submit to us.
Yeah. So honestly.
So thank you, Taylor, so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate you having you back on again. She was on episode 12.
Well, thank y'all.
Please listen to that. It was a fun episode. Yeah. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you for helping us grow and learn. Matthias.
It means a lot to us to like know that people are not only listening, but like, I don't know, like it's one thing to just like have family members and stuff like listen, but it's something else entirely to have like people participate,
people that you don't even know. And now they're all listening to you talk in your really tiny hot room as you're pounding a mix of pistachios, and it's an awesome feeling.
I'm really glad that sentence went there because I was concerned.
I really thought that it was going to mention all of the words, but it did not even one, so that's surprising.
But
okay, well, thank you so much again for listening, and we hope that this can help you do the right thing. Guys, we were taking way too long.
I was going to throw to you.